When I was a child, I was struck by lightning. Even in the tree, there's a burned spot where my mom was.
And that couldn't have given you abilities.
I shift my gaze, my body is lying there. I'm just terrified. I feel like I have 1,000, the needle pierces. What is this? So how do I fit all of this into my worldview? I couldn't piece together my worldview from these puzzles at all. I've stopped being afraid of it. I've let go of all those fears and anxieties. It was one of the first times I saw energies at all. That's it. After that, I just had a clip in my head. I experienced that very thing, It felt like I had already come home.
Dear friends, hello. My name is Juliet, and today we have a guest, a person who possesses secret knowledge from an ancient closed esoteric school, a clairvoyant psychic, as well as an engineer developer of secret electronic devices that enhance the brain's capabilities. He is also a person who isn't planning to die, and all of this is Anton Mikhailov. Anton, hi. Hi, I'm glad to see you here in our secret community, isn't that right? Anton, I'm not saying this for no reason. From the very beginning, I gave him the title of a person who isn't planning to die. Because you once made a very important choice in your life and set an intention that you are following. You decided to dedicate your life to transforming your physical body into a body of light, to surpass God and become one of those beings that live in our unmanifested world in the hidden universe.
That's a bold statement, to surpass God. Rather, to step out of it, to exit the world he has formed, to become independent.
And this is not at all unfounded, because the secret knowledge that you possess, knowledge that was passed on to you by one of those beings. And we will talk about this in great detail today, but we'll start from the very beginning. Please tell me, Anton, how did your path as a practitioner begin from early childhood?
My path as a practitioner began with the collapse of the Soviet Union. And before it happened, when these processes had already started, on the television screens, psychics appeared. Kashpirovsky, Chumako, Yuri, Longo, Dzuna. I still remember their names. At that time, I was the most ordinary child born in a pretty typical family. My mom was a kindergarten teacher and my dad was an engineer. And everything was fine, no religion, just a little book for atheists. By the way, we still have it in the family. And life was going on as usual. Everything was predictable and clear, when suddenly, out of nowhere, in my perception as a small child who knows nothing about politics or the planet, who is just playing with toys and listening to my parents, and then suddenly I see how my parents, whom I trusted absolutely and completely, I was constantly interested in what they had. Suddenly I see them starting to do things that contradict everything they had taught me. And that's when this dissonance appears in my mind, like, how can this be?
For example, and how old were you then? What age are we talking about?
Listen, it's hard to remember how old I was. I think I was around 6 or 7, time of kindergarten, beginning of school.
I was just a little kid, but you still had those realizations about your parents and the world, right?
That age of being a why kid, I was asking questions, curious about where I lived, what it was, how to interact with it, how to move around here. Well, that's normal behavior for a child, not a narrow neck or anything like that. It's just that you understand when you're taught that this does not exist. And then you see how first grandma and grandpa charge water from the TV screen. Then mom first pretends that in front of them she is pretending that it is not some kind of nonsense. And then, in her proud solitude, she also puts a jar there because the only one who sees her is me. And I see all of this, I realize all of this. I'm like, oh, wait, what's happening? Well, it turns out that this also has a place. So what is it then? Why was it denied? Why wasn't I taught this?
And what did your parents say to such direct questions?
There weren't direct questions.
So you didn't ask?
It was inside me. So these dissonances, I don't know why I didn't ask them such direct questions, but that was the seed, the very first seed that fell inside me and started to grow. Perhaps so much so tough. The socialist training that I received did not allow me to simply ask, what is this, how is it, where is it? But my worldview cracked, and it cracked completely and irreversibly. At that time, I really didn't know about it. But that's exactly it. It knocked me out of what was clear to me. So everything makes sense to you, and then suddenly it turns out that nothing makes sense, that there's something else. Here it is. And I can explain why this happened. I stopped believing in them. I just remembered this now very clearly. So when I saw my mom secretly charging water from grandmas, grandpas, and her own husband, that infallibility of parents, that they know everything, it faded away for me. Faded, went out. I was like, whoa. So it turns out I need to look for information elsewhere, not just from my parents. And this hit me so hard at that time that even a little later, there were moments when my parents tried to tell me something, explain things, and I openly said, no, I don't need that. I'll find out myself somehow. With friends, acquaintances, and buddies, well, I don't need to tell this anymore. That's trust.
So, as you said, you were about 6 or 7 years old when you were able to make a relatively adult decision about the fact that it's not that you can't trust anyone, but you can find and understand your own truth. And probably this is really such a starting point. It's not that someone will explain it to you, but you'll accept it.
Circumstances. I was just backed into a corner by circumstances. I might not have wanted to understand all of this like that, but watching what was happening around me, I just had no other choice. I could no longer trust the people I had trusted almost unconditionally. But at the same time, I couldn't refuse to realize what I'm actually in, how to interact with it.
Well, it seems to me this is much more important than you think, because a huge number of children have seen Santa Claus without a beard as their mothers secretly charge water near the TV in similar circumstances. But they didn't go further in some conclusions and in reflection regarding what it means something is wrong, which means probably it's not a fact that my parents are right. I can do it myself. I think this is a really important turning point. Can you tell me more about the story regarding the illness? When exactly?
Yes. And this is also one of the building blocks, the foundation that I later relied on. In the summer, I used to go to the dacha. My grandma and grandpa had a dacha, and they were always there. And my parents would take me there. And it just so happened that the season had just started, but they were closing the house for winter, and everything was being taken away from there. And they took away the medicines, took away the water so that it wouldn't burst. Well, everyone was taken back to the city. And the season had just started, and somehow I was sent there right away with the first group. So nothing has been done yet there. My grandpa and grandma were doing something, and there I was already sitting there. Naturally, it's the off-season, sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, and I got sick, caught a cold. Nothing supernatural, I had been sick before. And in my worldview, again, no one even taught me this. In my worldview, you get sick, you take medicine, you take some pills. Time passes, and you get better. All right, fine, if that's the way it is, then so be it. And then my temperature shot up, and somehow they found a thermometer from the neighbors, measured it, and turned pale when they saw it. Later, as my mom told me, I had a temperature close to 40 degrees. The child is very small. I said, I feel bad. I want to sleep. Everything hurts. What's going on? And they were like, let's try to find some medicine, but it didn't work out because there was nothing there. Yandex Taxi. There wasn't, just press 2 buttons and you could go in any direction. And that's it. I start getting sick and there are no pills, nothing at all. And my parents can't come because they are working and they can't leave work because the Soviet state is very strict. And so the first day goes by, then the second day, then the third day. I'm waiting for these pills and I realize that something is going wrong again because my grandma and grandpa are getting anxious. I can feel it. I can see it. And I can't do anything. So I'm powerless in this situation. And on top of that, I feel bad. A few days go by and I feel like I'm getting better. It seems like my eyes don't hurt anymore, my hair doesn't ache, and breathing has become a bit easier. I'm like, wait a minute, why do I feel better? What could be the reasons that I feel better? And no one told me about this.
So again, you asked yourself a serious self-reflective question. It turns out...
Well, of course, I think every child explores the world they are in. I studied it. I was studying myself, observing these processes, and here's another dissonance. So, just like that, I start to get better. Then the weekend comes, my mom arrives with a full bag of medicines, thermometers, everything is all set. Now I'm just not quite right. I also had some visions when I was feeling really bad. But all of that passed and I started to recover. When she arrived, well, basically, I was already running around. Yeah, of course, they pushed those medicines on me again, but it didn't really make much sense anymore. And then again, here it is. That little stone, this foundation appeared, that it turns out you don't really need to take medicine to get better. There's absolutely no need to take medicine. And then, after a while, it became clear to me that I had completely stopped using medication since I was 12. I just refused, and that's it.
At 12?
Since I was 12. And to this day, I do not use medications for recovery. Yes, I can take some vitamins there if I understand that there are no fruits. They don't want to get there. They don't want to run there. That's all. Hurry around, or they are there, but they're not ripe. I can take some vitamins, but it's exactly medicine. You know, when I catch something is happening to me, I wait until the last moment for my body to handle it on its own, and it does. So I don't have that kind of restriction. If I start feeling really bad, I'll probably agree to it, but I don't feel bad. I always recover on my own.
And now, looking at this situation from you, from your current self, how do you explain this? It's true. Self-healing of the body? Or is it some kind of logical story that if a child catches a cold, even if nothing is done, they will eventually recover?
If he has a healthy body to begin with, meaning he doesn't have any chronic illnesses, he doesn't have some genetic changes, that is, he is a normal, healthy child. And if he gets sick with something, most likely he will recover. So there's no reason why this illness should kill him. But if the child already has questionable health from the start, then there's no need to overthink it or come up with anything complicated. He just needs help. And now, with all this knowledge I have, different people come to me. There are people to whom I give advice, telling them to let their immune system spread its wings and handle it. There are people I tell, no, don't overthink it. Right now, you're not in a state where your immune system can spread its wings. You won't have time to do that, just like that. You need to help yourself first, bring yourself to a certain level, health, and then your body will grind these diseases down in no time. So the starting conditions are really important.
But you had them because you were healthy and strong.
Yes, just ordinary, normal.
And regarding the visions, you say that this was your first contact with some otherworldly forces. How did you do that? Did it have any influence on you?
Yeah, that was the moment. When I had a really high fever, I felt really bad, especially during the first few days. And I started telling the people who were with me about what I was seeing. And I quickly realized that they couldn't see it, that it was only me who could. I didn't even remotely understand what was going on. But for me, what was happening was not just as real as my own hand, but also what was happening was also trying to pull me along with it. So I was trying to resist. I didn't want to. What was that? Right now, maybe the details have faded. They were some kind of forms, conscious forms. I used to call them troublemakers back then. Later, they told me that I was there. I was told you were delirious, but they told me I was rambling, and I called them troublemakers. The troublemakers have come. They want to take me away. But I don't want to go. I want to stay with those with my loved ones. They're dragging me, and I'm resisting. I'm asking for help. Oh, at my grandparents, I'm asking for help, saying, save me from them, get them away from me. And I immediately realized that they can't even see them. They can't help me because they don't see this problem. And they are trying to convince me that this problem doesn't exist. But it's so obvious to me. I mean, I'm resisting, practically fighting it with all my strength. I don't want to go with them. This is really intense. At that time, it was on my mind. Yeah, then over time, it all faded away and disappeared. But this was probably the first conscious encounter with completely incomprehensible processes, with absolutely unknown processes, with what only I saw. And I understood perfectly well that it was like that. So my relatives don't see this. I was aware of it.
Did that scare you? Or did it evoke any emotions?
It was scary, but not in the way that horror paralyzes you. What was scary was that I was alone, that I can't reach out to the people who protected me, who have always protected me. I can't to convey what I see to those who, in principle, want to help me. They can't. This state that I am now alone with my problem, it was frightening, but not terrible. So I still resisted, I still fought against them, and apparently I didn't leave them behind because I'm here.
And who were they? How can you name them now? If they weren't bullies, what kind of entities were they?
You know, to this day, with all the knowledge I have, most likely, it was quite a remote area. There were definitely various forms of inorganic beings there. And when I had a high fever, I was still a child. My consciousness started to just detach from my body and perceive the surrounding reality directly. When all these inorganic beings saw that he perceives us, they started to play with me, to mess around, somehow drawing me in. They have this ability to draw you into those layers of the universe where you just, so by your own desire, you won't end up there. But if you don't have some kind of skill to get there, they mostly draw you in through dreams. So if a person is at least a little aware in their dream, he can follow them. Mostly it's dreams when you dream of something. It's extremely attention-grabbing. So there's a dream where someone is chasing you, for example, but it's not about that. It's about something else. There's a dream where you're, for example, walking, following some kind of scenario, doing something, and suddenly you see a clock on the wall, and you look at them, wait, they seem kind of strange. And suddenly these clocks start undergoing some transformations, changes, and these clocks start to communicate with you. And they have, I don't know, tails and ears growing out of their eyes. And you're like, what's even happening? What is this? So your attention really starts to focus on that. And this is a very clear sign that an alien consciousness is interacting with you right now. So a living being, just one whose body is energy, and most likely in childhood, it was exactly those kinds of beings that started interacting with me because I just saw them, my attention was drawn to them, and they tried to pull me in. I perceived them as bullies who were going against my will. I didn't even perceive it as death. I just didn't want to go with them. But after some time, when I was already a well-known astral traveler, I encountered these situations and dove into them calmly. I would emerge from those layers of the universe, and there were no problems at all. I was just a kid, and no one told me about this.
You were a kid, but it turns out you had this sensitivity, which seems to be innate. From what you're saying, I understand. So not everyone gets approached by them. Bullies, so to speak. Not everyone has that kind of interaction, especially at such a young age. Even when you're sick, it doesn't matter, even in any altered state.
It played out with the course of events. Of course, it feels nice to throw my importance up there, to say, yeah, I'm bent. Let's be honest. A deaf village, temperature near 40 degrees, I'm already on the floor in such a dead state, and everything is practically coming out of me. And then there are these beings, I don't know, the guidance of the spirit.
Okay. Nevertheless, everything turned out exactly the way it was probably meant to be.
Not giving me a chance to somehow dodge this process.
About leaving the body, I know that you also had an out-of-body experience at a very young age.
Well, not in the sense of being little anymore. I was exactly 12 years old.
12 years old, indeed. Well, everything up to 12 years old, you think, okay.
Okay, sorry.
Let's talk about that experience. Can you please tell me what it was like? Was it intentional or conscious? Did it change your life before and after? Very interesting.
This is probably the moment in my life when I finally leaned on this built foundation. So I built it, but I didn't use it. So I didn't justify my actions and behaviors with those inconsistencies. I continued to live like an ordinary child, kept playing with regular toys, interacting with regular kids. There weren't any major changes, but it was just something that was lying there and growing inside me. And already, how to put it, a new time has come. Little shops started to open up, all sorts of esoteric ones, I still remember them. The title is White Clouds and the Path to Oneself. I started to study this issue. I mean, as soon as I had the opportunity to gather information, I immediately began to do so. Oh, you know, I even remember where I bought my first book. It was a store on the couch. It's real. Was it the store on the couch It was either a catalog that was thrown into everyone's mailbox, and there was a book called The Energy of Telecult being sold, printed, well, I don't know, by the cheapest printing house, and you could order these books by courier.
But you were already an adult. How old were you then? Not 12 years old?
Yeah, no, I was just, at the age of high school back then in my life, I ordered that book for myself. I started to read it, study it, try something out. And of course, I started talking about it. So during that period of time, I started to actively to state
The fact that there's no interest in your surroundings or in someone, women.
to friends, acquaintances, my mom's friends, my parents, hoping that they actually know something. It felt like a solid wall to me. I had already started to get active in that direction. That was just the beginning. Voroborov assisted me and my childhood friend, came to Siberia and brought with him things. In those things, there were all sorts of books, and one of them was called Red Magic. I was like, whoa. And I would tell him, listen to me, there's this book, it's not even mine. There was, well, a pie, let's read it. Not like it's nonsense. I don't even know where it came from, how to get rid of it. I start reading, well, yeah, all sorts of rituals, all sorts of spells and responses, and then practice for out-of-body experiences. The interest sounds promising, and you don't need to do any rituals or anything. So messing around, memorizing all these witchcraft stuff, texts, poems, I'll give it a try. But I had the thought in my head that to have magical abilities, you need to have all the sorcerers in the 9th generation. So in my understanding, it should have been passed down genetically through genes. If you were born into an ordinary family, then you can only read about it. And basically, I came to terms with the fact that I had read about it and it was interesting. And then the book explains to me that you can learn this. I was like, oh, well, this is nonsense. This can't be. All right, I'll give it a try. And I started doing the technique that was described there. I did it for a day, 2, 3, 4, about a week. I was doing it. Honestly, I wasn't expecting anything at all, not even close. There wasn't any hope. So just for fun, simply because I was curious. And about a week later, I go to bed. Some crazy effects are happening, buzzing, flashes. And I see a piano standing there. Well, it's dark at night. I was sleeping in a big room, and there's a piano. I shift my gaze, and my body is lying there. I'm just in horror, like 1,000 needles are piercing through me. I jump up on the couch where I was sleeping. My heart is pounding like a jackhammer. I'm sweating, I'm being pierced. It's just like it pierces. I have goosebumps all over my body. My eyes are wide open, but this has already happened. I mean, it has already happened. I reached my height, although I was lying without my height. I managed to look at musical instrument. That was it. I played on it. I know exactly how it looks. And I managed to look at my body. After that, everything in my head was just buzzing. It pierced through me so deeply. That's everything I doubted, I didn't allow myself to believe. I just brushed it off. I was curious, but I was in the mindset that if you weren't born a wizard, then just live like everyone else. And then suddenly, all of this refreshes. I realize that I don't know anything at all about this world. He's just nothing, and it needs to be dealt with urgently. That's something to figure out. You shared this with both parents. I sent them, immediately looked for, you will no longer teach anything. At all, nothing.
Did you want to share this with someone to be heard?
I chatting with my friends.
Did they support you in this?
No.
They didn't mock you?
No. It's warm there somehow. No, that's just it. It was cool. So again, I was saying I had nothing to share. I was talking about it. I read about it. I didn't say that I did it. So they were like, well, that's cool. Maybe it exists. Maybe it doesn't. Because, well, the country that shaped the rigid thinking has already ended, but the new hasn't formed anything yet. That's why people were quite open to new knowledge. Yeah, I'll kill it. And it was cool to listen to something new. And I was just talking about something new that I read myself. But after that event, after I experienced it, after I felt all of this, I was in I suddenly became a radical, just everything Everything had to be destroyed, everything that had been accepted and used before. So if it weren't the family need, then people, that's it. I would have been completely swept away, but it played a role that I didn't have enough money. There were problems. There was food, but when one sausage is shared between two adults and one child, that's pretty sad food. I realized that it wouldn't work. Just dive into all of this and pretend that the material world doesn't exist. So I started working pretty early, earning some, and tens of rubles, hundreds of rubles. And that was obvious to me because where my parents worked during the USSR and what was left after its collapse, it's not about that at all.
How did that rebellion express itself then, you say? I started sending everyone away, I stopped learning. So sending away the authority, the school of knowledge, and social institutions was...
The toilets are flushed. I immediately told my parents that they shouldn't tell me anymore how to do things right. I didn't need that. I don't appreciate it. I'm not interested in it at all.
You don't know, did this lead to any conflicts? Of course, I mean, did it create any...
Of course, yes. But the first thing they did was come to the school and calm down a bit. But I wasn't calming down. I started buying already. I started choosing more serious literature more consciously. I started choosing literature that was related to what I had experienced, not just, randomly picking something out of the blue, like give me something about wizards or about magic or some fortune-telling cards. And about the numbers too, those numbers. And sacred geometry is pretty cool too. But here, no, here I left my body, I need to know about it. I started picking up all the books that were pulling me in beyond the boundaries of society very actively. And moreover, the skill didn't go anywhere. I continued to leave my body. I didn't even have time to close my eyes when it started happening to me. Well, in the evening, when I went to bed, I didn't even need to do anything anymore. I just relaxed, and those processes would start happening. I would close my eyes, and at the same time, I was already disconnecting. I started traveling in my own body. It took me to places I never expected, and I didn't understand that there was no one to clarify things for me. So yes, you read in the book, well, that's fine, but what's in the book isn't described. Who can explain to me that I didn't need to make any effort? It just happened by itself. It kept happening, and I stopped being afraid of it. All those fears and anxieties just went away. For me, it was all very soft, and I just kept moving forward. So I didn't accept any authorities. I didn't accept any socially approved opinions. None at all. How can I put this? Social institutions were ignored, but I had to stay in the material world once again because the family had problems with money, and I understood perfectly well that I needed to work, I needed to earn money. If I want something, I have to go earn it myself because everything else is just barely enough. Yeah, my parents would give me gifts. Sure, they tried to make me happy, but I could see where the gifts were coming from. They would take some family relic, sell it, and use that to buy me a gift. And that was also sad, actually, because I saw it.
How do your parents feel about your manifestation now, as they already do? As a full-fledged practitioner, this is your work now, your expression in life, your realization. Can we say that they have accepted it?
Listen, right now, I only have my mother left. My father is gone. She has no complaints about us, just zero. She's proud of me. Yeah, her friends occasionally try to poke her, saying that I'm telling some strange things. But she doesn't just listen to my stories. She sees how I behave, how I act, to how I support her, and how I interact with her. And now I actually play a role. A man she can rely on like a solid wall. I'm not a husband. I'm a child who grew up and took on the full responsibility for her well-being and for myself. Any little problem, I come in and solve it. The problems there are funny. Actually, I come in and deal with it, not brushing it off. I can say that I'm in the studio right now, but I'll finish up and call you. Naturally, I give money, we organize some events. There, if necessary, I buy things. So I do everything to make myself comfortable. How can she feel about me? Yes, she feels great about me. She asked to be taught how to search for information herself. My videos on the internet. And now everything is slowly coming together. In the end, I've managed to pull things to my side, looking back at life.
Look, we were in school together. You finished school, you understand. You went to college where you needed to go, you were going, you were working, you went to college. Tell me how you worked.
I already started working in school. I had all kinds of unofficial jobs, like various promotional events.
There in that merchandise, I would leave my body at night, wandering around. In the astral, and in the morning, I'd be in a suit. I don't know how not to argue with dolls.
With players there, with a jerk.
I was running around with a smile on my face, selling a bit there, but you understood why you were doing it. That it was for a reason, that you needed money to earn some noise. But from an educational standpoint, how did you develop further? Did you go...
Well, how did I develop? Mostly these events didn't take place in the evenings.
No. I mean, which college did you go to?
First I got into the radio engineering program at the Southwest. And I somehow, besides my main focus, I got into electricity. I really liked the nature of electricity. I came across, in the esoteric world, for some reason, the books of Nikola Tesla inspired me. At that time, it really looked like magic. And on the contrary, you were taught your whole life in school that electricity would kill you because that's how it works. He demonstrated more about how electricity works. In the shaggy years, like this electricity, it comes out of his body and he's fine. It didn't kill him. And when I started to figure this out, I got fascinated with electricity. I just became curious. And it made sense to assume I should study radio electronics because it was one thing what he had back then and how much effort he put in just to control the electric current. How is it now? I wanted to study this, how it is in the modern world, to do with the modern components what he did a long time ago. I come to this institute and the mess hasn't gone anywhere. And I see empty classrooms, just sanded. That's how it is. Paint, varnish in the classroom, chairs, tables. It's just like time has sanded away, carelessly sanded away time. On pause. All professors who teach, I don't know, from textbooks, almost from the 70s.
So progress hasn't reached the world?
Absolutely, zero. So it feels like Tesla's floor stabilization. Yes, it felt like they were trying to teach me something that's already in the trash, in the garbage, something that nobody needs anymore. And they're all serious about it. Let's teach all of this. Computers are already here. Programming is developing everywhere. Personal computers have already become a thing. Toys have even started to appear in all of this. And then they start telling me some crazy stuff about, and the very first Macintoshes, I think that's what they're called. How do they work? Why do I need this? What do I need it for? These computers aren't even needed for free anymore. And they're telling me how they're built, how they work.
Did you finish studies?
No, I started skipping. I became more work. I began to take on more of the workload so that I would have money. And so in the end, I failed. And today I will have zero.
Tell me, when you were going to college, did you have any kind of conscious or maybe unconscious plan? Well, sometimes it happens that you finish school, go to medical school, train to be a surgeon, and work in a certain hospital. Did you have something like that? Well, in any other profession, in one way or another, kids at 18. Do you have any understanding of that? Did you have that? So either I'm just interested in it, I'll go and study, or I want to become something specific. I don't know, an inventor or something like that.
There was a factor called the army. I understood perfectly that either I go to study now and I still have the opportunity to do what I love, or I go to serve now and I won't have any more chances to do what I love. That was a factor. The second factor, if I go into the army, I'm left without money, and my parents are somehow trying to manage on their own. And I just realized that I had no other options. I had to go study, to where I like. I can get in, I don't know, to Hogwarts Academy. I think that's what it's called.
Here we go. It happened.
Yeah, but I can at least go study electricity because I'm interested in that. And when I saw that they couldn't explain to me what I was interested in, what I wanted to know, they were explaining some absolute nonsense that belongs in the trash. Well, then my interest in learning basically came to an end. I sincerely believed that my internal skills would be enough, still managed to hold on and work. No, it wasn't enough. I managed to work, but I couldn't hold on. I got kicked out. I still had a year to spare because I finished school a year early. I still had a year to spare. I enrolled in college again, this time to study psychology.
So you finished there and went to study psychology.
I was expelled from there. I was finished there.
Got it. Well, by the will of fate. Tell me, now we'll go back to the psychologist, and you didn't have the thought or any desire to become a practicing practitioner, to do extrasensory perception in some profession of my own, but to develop in it, help people, and just be a specialist there, a full-time specialist in extrasensory perception, or there was simply no such behavior before that?
So all those Kashpirovsky and Chumak types have already faded into oblivion. They were no longer on the screens. Something new, but there were all sorts of fortune tellers appearing there. But I already treated this as to information noise. That is, after all, I already had some kind of specific experience in this matter. I had a pretty clear understanding of who could actually do something and who was just putting on a show. Yeah, I've seen people who put on a show, pretending to read cards, putting on a performance. They just shuffle around. Maybe that's a lot. That was then, but I didn't want to be among them. So for me, it was something very intimate, very personal, very important. And pretend, there's a little gnome there. Yeah, I see the gnome now. I'm going to cleanse him. Control over the internet. No little gnomes, actually. They don't have to be little gnomes at all.
I'm saying that you don't have to pretend or do something that's not true to find the truth in this. Really, the truth is what leads to the essence. Maybe he read books too, for sure. There were things about yoga and Eastern philosophy. Yeah, did you know that it comes from India? I knew that it takes many years to learn this. So did you know this yourself, or were you just sour about it?
I read stories of people. I read books by Carlos Castaneda who came into the hands of very serious practitioners. And how many years did he dedicate to even starting to get oriented? How long did it take Castaneda to study? Sushi. But that was also a period like in the last years of school. And I started reading books around that time. And those books are still relevant today. For me, they are the most accurate in describing the processes that are happening beyond the usual.
Did you reread them as an adult?
I've reread them many times. I've read them at least 4 times from start to finish. And sometimes, you read a book and it feels like the last time you flipped through it, you just skimmed through 3 pages. So every time there's something new, every time there's something that was filtered out in the previous reading. But at some point, I stopped doing that because, you see, there was no the opportunity to ask questions. So I studied it thoroughly. I absorbed FOMO and everything that was there.
But questions remained.
And the questions remained, yeah. And I realized, okay, that somehow after some time you say, I had some ideas. But I never had the idea that I would go and build a career and earn, I don't know, in businesses. I had the idea that I would find an opportunity for myself. Start searching that system of knowledge, that master, that school. I didn't care who would finally be able to satisfy those questions that I couldn't find answers to. And these questions weren't just something I sat down and thought about and then a question popped up. These were questions I faced when I encountered something that I didn't understand and I couldn't find a description of that process anywhere. I have encountered a huge number of them, situations in the world, in the astral realm, you could say, that were inexplicable to me. And I needed someone who at least was doing the same thing but had more knowledge than I did. Yeah, I found people practicing astral projection with whom I could speak the same language. And where I saw that, yes, they really...
Still in Moscow?
Of course, yeah, in Moscow. But again, we couldn't teach each other. Has something like that ever happened to you? Yeah. How did you get out of that? More like an exchange of experiences than, yeah. So it was too slow. And I understood that, all right, okay, right now I'm studying. Then alongside that, I'm earning a little, saving up for myself so that I could spend it all on that. I wasn't daydreaming. I understood perfectly well that I needed money for plane tickets, for a visa, for accommodation. So I've never been out of it at all. This material lack really held me tightly. And I still understand perfectly well that money is needed. So I want to, for example, create a space for practitioners, build a house, design it according to geometry. You need money. They don't just appear with a snap of your fingers. You have to earn them. So here there are no illusions at all. Not a motive. I was fully aware of that and I worked. So in my understanding, you needed to earn first and then go spend.
So it sounds like a plan then. Nevertheless, it's quite a strategic plan. And in the end, you found yourself thrown out of the world and enrolled in psychology. So what made you make that choice then? Again, when the atmosphere, let's say, isn't clouded, this concept of a psychologist, when now every second person is a psychologist, helping professions specialists, that wasn't even a thing. You're going to see a psychologist.
It's very simple. Have you ever read the translation? The term psychological?
Well, no.
Well, it's implied that it's the science of the soul. About the soul, it's like
What do these words soul mean? It's the psyche pisai, in my opinion, more like the brain, the head. Maybe we'll show off our knowledge of Latin.
Yes, if it is that after all, to see where all this comes from. The psyche didn't exist before, it's a modern word.
The inner world existed, but that was back then. During the reign of the Tsar in the Middle Ages, probably like that. And Latin, well, that's when Freud came along. And it was all about the psyche.
When Freud appeared, it was already less modern. You're talking about really ancient times. The origin of this word, when else? It was probably ancient Greece, Rome, where all this came from. So the science of the soul, in a nutshell, translates like that. It's clear that they don't study the soul there. It's clear that they exclusively study the activity of the brain. And why psychology? Because it was the closest thing to what had already become a part of my life, the closest. And this, to a lesser extent, it would pull me in a completely different direction. Who else am I going to study to become, I don't know, maybe a lawyer? What kind of lawyer am I if I read esoteric literature? If I'm talking to people about something deep, something intimate, that you wouldn't shout from the rooftops, this is psychology. This is the most suitable activity.
Of option.
Out of the available options, yes. From what is official, not even psychiatry, because psychiatry deals with sick people, but specifically psychology. From what there's official, and that's it. I went to study, I studied officially. And that's it. I went to study, I studied. Did you study there for a long time? I spent 5 years there. Of course, all this time I was trying to work. And at one point I managed to get really well settled.
You worked in a corporation, right?
Yeah, but that's a whole different story, also pretty cool. I talked to people, I was looking for all sorts of ways to gain knowledge. And I met a girl, on the website there was a store called White Clouds, and they had a dating section. And I got in touch there. With the girl, I liked her, and we talked, and it was so interesting. We started talking, messaging each other. I think it was the ICQ Messenger back then. We were messaging back and forth, back and forth. It was like two souls connecting, just line by line, the same topics, the same interests. And that's it. We agreed to meet. She says, yeah, come over to my place. I live alone, no problem. I said, great. I live with my parents. It's a bit tricky to arrange everything. Basically, if you want, there won't be any problems either. She says, yeah, well, what do you want? Let's go for it. And that's it. I'm already at the starting line. And then suddenly she texts me this phrase saying, wait, can you send me a photo of yourself? I'm like, wait, I don't even know what she looks like. I text her, oh, hey, yeah, let's do it. And then you send me a photo too. Because it wasn't common before. There was basically a questionnaire, you fill it out. And in accordance with this questionnaire, you are given search engine results. So we exchange photos, and there's like, a minute of silence, and she doesn't text me. Mutual. I look at her as if she looked different in my imagination. Based on what I sent her, I definitely didn't match her idea of me either. No, there wasn't. Did you see? I woke up a little And I'm writing, listen, well, we have the interests of interest, meaning it's about relationships, interests, looking for friends, and it's nice to spend time together. Well, it's nice to spend time attending events, not just that, it's nice to spend time now. I write, well, listen, well, you're looking for friends, right? Yeah, I'm basically a good friend. Yes, we had a good talk. When things go well, okay? So I came to her because everything coincided so much with us that outwardly we didn't match up with your ideas of what your partner should be like, but everything else was so consistent. So in the end, she became your girlfriend, that the relationship started and really took off. And in the end, it was actually her. After a while, she said that my teacher is coming to Moscow and wants to go out. I'm like, what teacher? Where is he coming from? He says he's coming from India. I said, let's go, I'll check it out. And it was at that moment that I saw a person for the first time in my life who talks about things I knew, but things I hadn't read. He came to Moscow. Yes, he rented class at school and held his classes there. He taught practical energy work. And when he was telling all of this, when he was showing, I'm doing the same thing right now. Exactly. I'm not making anything up.
Your course is called?
Yeah, even the name is the same. Not that, although now, of course, you can't find the end of it because so many years have passed. It's probably been about 20 years since that moment. Well, maybe a little less. Yeah, no, not less. And so I'm listening to him. I was listening to him very carefully. I was paying very close attention to his states, to what he was demonstrating, to the practices he was starting to show. Well, there it is. The funny thing is that, again, his image, I mean, how I imagined the teacher and what I saw in front of me, it just didn't match.
And why was it so important to you? What difference does it make?
Listen, yeah, it doesn't matter, it was, but the brain, you can't fool it. It still paints some kind of ideal picture, and you're striving for that ideal picture.
You couldn't perceive him? How did that get in the way? So you couldn't perceive him as an authority or as a teacher?
Yeah, I was constantly looking for a way to argue with him. So he was so different from the others who called themselves teachers that I wanted to test him to the limit. Are you really not like everyone else? Are you really doing what you say? Acting the way you're telling us right now.
Did he withstand your pressure?
For him, it wasn't pressure at all. It was so much in his performance, you know, like a flawless dance, that interaction. Every time I sat there, I was like, damn, how can he do that? That just fueled me even more. I had this certain thrill to pounce on him, to bite at him. Some kind of, to pounce on him, to bite at him. But he didn't bite back. He always reacted like that, like every time, and he remained unfazed. That intrigued me even more about this person. And then he left. He went through it, and now he's gone. I was like, well, he left, so he left. I kept looking for different options. I don't know, I've probably been to all the sects, all the schools, all the groups, everything that was in Moscow. I've checked them all out. And that's just it. I was also with Chernobrov at the Cosmosearch. They were running around there looking for flying saucers. I was into cosmobiology. These are channeling sessions. They also had their own group and all sorts of Russian styles and the systems of the Kadoshnikovs. So at least somewhere there was some hint that beyond of society, beyond the official one. That's where I headed right away.
You didn't find your own there? You know your pack?
Why was everyone there like their own? Everyone was their own, even if I didn't fit in. They would never accept me. For some reason, there was a lack of value. There were different values in my value system. To realize where I am and who I am. In the value system of those groups, and they weren't engaged in anything bad or good. It was just that in their value system, for example, for Chernobrov and the Cosmosearch, it's about finding a flying saucer. Well, I mean, okay, that's cool, but it's not for me. It's just not enough. I want to know what's behind this curtain, what's hidden in the shadows, things you just can't find out easily. And over time, I gradually started to drift into some more orthodox traditions, not modern, not newly made, not the kind of stuff that's blaring from every corner, not something you just went and bought in a bookstore. And I started to move towards something that comes from the depths of the ages. I started looking there, and I was working in parallel again, earning money. I was reading the comments. I earned that money where I got it from. I worked for this corporation. In the end, this girl listens to all the reports and interrupts everything. And the girl, I mean, is just a bit of a nuisance. Yeah, my friend is a girl, but what's up with the boy? Something's off.
No, well, we were young and we followed the rules. The chronicles were lucky.
Yeah. Not only did she show me this master, but he just left. I didn't have the opportunity to contact him. Yeah, it's not like I was really eager to do that. I needed to process and get through this relationship with him. I guess analyze it, something like that. She says, listen, why are you always juggling these side jobs? Go get a normal job. I said, yeah, who needs me? A psychologist, a dropout, and a radio electronics technician who hasn't spent a single day learning anything truly valuable. She says, come on, I'll find you right now. You just don't believe in yourself, right? I'll help you with that. Well, let's go. And she went online, did some digging, and she says, look, this position is just right for your skills. I said, well, okay, I'll go. I went and they accepted me.
Is it in a corporation?
And that was, yeah. I told them what I was doing, had a chat. There were already shared departments there. So there was no HR department anymore. It was called the Trading House Megapolis.
And what were you doing there? What were your job responsibilities?
So a group of specialists was being formed there, or they were supposed to have a thorough understanding of marketing and ensure that the representatives followed these rules. So we were, well, something like...
In the Pinot Review?
The inspector, yes, the inspector has arrived and we could report any employee. So we were hierarchically above the branch director. There was only one above us, the director of the corporation itself. The manager, and even higher above us, was the founder, the owner of it all. And with my skills, I landed this position. And they paid well there. There were a lot of business trips. I didn't have time to spend money on myself, and I started saving up a decent amount. So that resource went on a trip later.
Well, you see, it turns out you're working in the corporation, you have a girlfriend, and at the same time, you're constantly in... You read, search, ask questions, and attend various esoteric circles.
And then I stopped attending.
Nevertheless, there was still a search, of course, in the spiritual realm, but it was determined where to go, how it all fits together, because many, well, you work in a corporation, a certain egregore, and whether you like it or not, it influences you. And then you step out and think, well, I'll go do some creative practice, or how does that even work, you know? Because what saved me was that I never planned a career for myself. I understood that this was temporary, just to earn some money, not to get stuck.
No, for me, everything was already predetermined. In my early years, I just want to say that again. I just understood that without money, I wouldn't be able to do anything. I wouldn't be able to move around the world. It was a forced action. I was completely calm about it, knowing that I could work. I worked at McDonald's for a few months because it opened near my house. I thought, why not give it a try? And they hired me. And there was a free register. I stood there and mopped the floors, fried potatoes, and worked the register. I did all of that, went through all of it. I never had a relationship with work where it felt like something that would torment me. No, it was a necessity. And my friend, she too, she worked, then she changed jobs, but she also held decent positions. And we, the two of us, unburdened by any major expenses, because we weren't planning to buy an apartment, yes, we have it there. There were cars, but they were purely for work, not just any. There were super cool ones at the markets like Chevrolet, Ford, just for driving to work. And there was no goal to buy another car, a house. No, none of that. We both clearly understood that our path was leading us to a very serious school. You need to figure out how to get there and determine where the only one is. She had this teacher, but I didn't recognize him as a teacher because I didn't know him well enough.
She wanted to go to him specifically to study. She was already studying with him, but she wanted to connect with him in person.
She then went to see him. That's why she went in person, meaning she was moving in that direction. I couldn't cling to it because it was too unclear for me, since it was Hinduism, it was Sanskrit. These were terms like Shiva. Shakti, who they are, what they mean, where they come from. I was leaving my body and some things were attacking me. What is this anyway? And all of that, it didn't stick to me, but I was far from it. So I kept looking in the areas that made sense to me.
Truth. So was it your first girlfriend who led you to tantric practices? Did you practice together? What was there? Yes. Was there something?
Yes, that's true. And who else was I practicing this with in Tantra? Well, you see, this is Tantra, not what is implied in your question right now. You're asking me about the Kama Sutra right now, not about Tantra.
Well, I'm asking you about Tantra. They ask what's written on the paper. There's a conversation about Shiva and hats.
It always sounds like that. You don't have to do it with a girl. You look for it inside, right? But isn't it about paired practices?
The practice involves a man and a woman, even if there's no sexual element in the text. Nevertheless, the male and female energies should connect, which, as a result of this, something should come out of it. Isn't that what Tantra is about?
Tantra is when you find it within yourself, both the masculine and feminine principles. And this beginning is not about the sexual organs. It's the beginning of the entire universe of creation. When Shiva, one is like a lingam, you position it in the shaft like a vortex around it. And here you see the pillar of light and the energetic vortex swirling around it. And this is what you're trying to say, the masculine and feminine. Yes, it's not about the masculine and feminine. It's the pillar of light and the vortex. The pillar of light of Shiva, the vortex, the shaft, they constantly communicate with each other. They constantly interact. This is Tantra. You seek this Tantra within yourself.
So you practice it individually, just sitting next to her?
We practiced real Tantra. It was within the framework of that tradition, which I ultimately embraced. But we were engaged in Taoist sexual practices, the Kama Sutra and all that other stuff, where, yes, specifically, a man and a woman, a boy and a girl are engaging with each other. Non-standard sex, taking into account energy, the movement of fluids, considering everything that comes with it. In fact, during my second year, I demonstrated some of these practices. Yes, we were engaged in this, we studied it, and it was, again, part of our search. Maybe there's something there that we're looking for. The ladies gave up several years, honestly, to this direction, and yet there is not enough knowledge for us to finally dedicated our training to this direction. Not enough, still not enough.
And on a global scale, did the vision converge on something, well, not that it was a global point of learning, but were you heading towards something similar? Or did you see the truth in roughly the same thing? And the direction you should move in, was it roughly the same with the girl?
We agreed on how we saw our path. That is it. It's not some specific point, it's not some specific place. It's really about immersion. Learning in the development of skills, mastery, and experience. It really doesn't matter where that point was supposed to be.
So by working in a corporation, you were able to save up for travel? You did it intentionally, you and the girl saved up and went, or how was it? Where did you go?
To India. We went to India together. Why? Because in the information field of that time, this was considered the most mysterious, the most accessible, the most filled with teachers, masters, ashrams, spiritual teachers, a place. Yeah, we knew there was also some place called Shuling, somewhere around China, but in India it seemed like it would be more interesting. And I wrote my resignation letter and put it on my manager's desk. He said that I was thinking about something. I say, that I offended him or what happened? He says, everything is great. I'm just leaving the country, and most likely for a very long time. Well, if anything, he says, just come back. We don't have any questions at all. I say, no, I just have questions for myself.
I have a couple of questions for the world.
Yeah, we need to sort out the departures. And that's it. She also quit her job. And so we handed over the apartment. My parents lived there too.
That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, this was also some kind of support for what was to come. And that's it. We bought the tickets and got the visa. By some miracle, they issued it to us for a whole year right away. So we had an unusual visa. We had some kind of either a work visa or something like that. Well, the one that, and we just got on the plane and flew away.
What was your plan? Land in India and go wherever the eyes look, or what?
We landed in a city called Chennai. Most likely it has already been renamed, because I remember that they were renaming it in that time it was Chennai. We got off the plane. We couldn't afford to buy a tour. We couldn't make a reservation for ourselves. Something could have caught our fancy and stayed, or it might not have caught our fancy and not stayed. We didn't know how we were going to act. We just needed to get there, and that was it. And once we were there, we rented a place, arranged our own transfer, everything ourselves. So we were actually going there to live, to settle in some temple or ashram, to find a place to stay, and then just start our training. So what was the plan? But we didn't know who we were going to meet there. Well, who did we have? Roman Maharshi Sai Baba, because he was quite popular back then. We were just with a Sri Aurobindo, that's the local Matra Mandir there. And that's actually where we started from. Well, we planned to start.
No, I mean, did you know a specific address of the ashram where you could go?
Well, of course. Yes, of course. Well, we knew the guides, all the points were there.
Well, it just looks like, you guys are like, well, let's go seek knowledge.
It looked exactly like that, but there was a guide to key points where the ashrams were located. When to get there, an understanding of the form where you could ask and find out why.
But what was your purpose? Where were you going? You were going to some ashram, right?
Yes, we were heading to the territory of Oroville. This place is called Oroville. And we found a car. There it was no longer a problem. We sat down and I think we drove for about 7 hours or maybe 6. We arrived in the evening and some friends of friends recommended a place. And that's it. We settled in and rented a little room and we started looking for the building.
Look, for those who have never traveled, for example, I've never been to India to an ashram and I'm not really familiar with it. Can you just show up without booking anything and listen or meditate there? Before you could, or is there free entry and there's no specific training program there? How does it all happen?
You could before, but not in all ashrams. For example, at Sai Baba's ashram, you could just show up and say, well, I want to be with you. They would literally look at you for just a few seconds and decide whether to let you stay. Moreover, again, I might be mixing things up, but I think it was even further back. So there wasn't any fixed price. At Raman Maharshi's ashram, you had to book a spot because there were so many pilgrims and there were a lot of French people too. I still remember that, a lot of Europeans, and there just wasn't any space. And we couldn't get in there. So we had to live nearby. There was Mount Aurochala, and this is the city of Tiruvannamalai. I remembered the second city, but I can't recall the first one. And we were living there, nearby, let's say.
And how does self-study happen? So
there's just a daily schedule, and you follow that daily schedule.
What does it involve?
Singing mantras, you could say, songs, mantras. In the early morning then, sometimes there are some daily routine practices, lectures, and discussions, of course, in English as well.
The teachers lead those, meaning the practices and lectures. How is the process of knowledge transfer thus carried out? It's the teacher who comes out and...
He's telling something, well, yeah, it's implied that you're sitting there in awe, soaking it all in, looking at him, he comes out, and it's the same thing. Sai Baba, when he was still alive, he was alive. He sat down, said something, and looked around at everyone. You could try to slip them a piece of paper with a question, in Russian, which he obviously won't understand. Well, you're just there. You're present in this place, in this field. You want to read the books that have been written in incredible numbers. If you want to meditate, go there, sit, no one will chase you away. There's a chance to take turns to go to the kitchen and cook. Well, different ashrams have different rules. We started with Oroville. There wasn't really any of that there. There was the Matri Mandir, which is the temple. You could come in if you wanted, but only during certain visiting hours. And there's a huge difference between you as a tourist and a local resident. So in those places where the security guard sees that you're a tourist, they say, go on, go on, go on. You walk through the whole crowd, through the whole line, and they let you through right away. There you go. For the locals, they stand in all these lines. They just can't get onto the temple grounds like that. And it's everywhere.
So when all this is happening, do you understand what's going on?
You don't understand anything at all.
So what's the point of being there at all? That's just it. Where's the knowledge then? How do you find it?
Yeah. And here we are, just spinning around in all of this simmering. And I'm like, hey, is everything okay? She was like, yeah, not really great. I said, so what are we doing? So what's happening now? What are we spending our money on? What are we spending our time on? I didn't picture it like this. She says, I didn't picture it like this. I said, oh, so what are we going to do? She says, well, we need to keep looking. We need to look for exactly what we had envisioned in our heads.
And how did you envision it? Give me a brief overview so I can understand.
We envisioned it in our heads that you come in, live, and you're being taught, even if it costs some money, well, fine, let it cost money, but you live, you're being taught, and you're fully immersed in this system.
So this is the plan with feedback, where you can ask questions, clarify something, right?
Yes. When you can talk, well, it's not like this person is sitting somewhere 50 meters away from you in this sort of half asleep state, and you have to perform from that. The same Amma too. Again, she came with her sermons. Again, there's a crowd of people. You can't approach from any side. Again, specially trained people just grab you by the arms, pull you through the crowd, and sit you right in front of the stage. And you look around and see that there are only tourists around you, foreigners. And if you look back about 30 meters away, that's where the local population starts. Behind the fences, it's sweltering heat, but you have your own space. You sit calmly, almost able to sprawl out. And there, she sings songs, tells some stories, all of that. Then the hugs with her begin, well, that's what she's famous for, hugging everyone. And again, they grab you by the hand and pull you to her. While they're pulling you there, they ask you 50 times where you're from, what your name is, why you came, and again, where you're from. So they keep asking. When you approach her, you can see that at that moment, they're telling her where I'm from, what language I speak, and what I've managed to share. And she whispers something in broken Russian in my ear. Although there were legends that she says something to everyone in their own language, something she couldn't possibly know. How could she not know this? If before I was allowed to see her, they found out everything that she's now telling me in broken Russian.
Didn't impress me?
It's not that I wasn't impressed. It truly, really grounded me.
So it's an attraction for tourists?
It's an attraction, yes. I genuinely went there to learn. So for me, it wasn't even an institution. It was the meaning of life. I was striving for this. I arrive and I see this spectacle.
When did this disappointment set in? You probably didn't go and close, did you? Did you realize right away that something was off right away?
Right away, there was disappointment, but there was hope that, well, maybe it's not the right place. Maybe it's not the right guru. Maybe it's not this and it's not that. But the disappointment, like this effect, when you are talking about something, while you're reading the promotional brochures, and then this thing is in your hands and you're like, this one, there you go. Well, that happens quite often. And it's the same here. We were passionate about it. We were striving for it. I guess I was more passionate to a greater extent because she had a plan B. That's the same unclear guy who teaches practical energy. And everything was so incredibly charged and it was deeply profound. Not just that I can say I was disappointed, but it was just that thought, truly, the meaning. I lived in Russia, in Moscow, and there were some events quite similar to those here. And no one here is going to teach you anything new or push anything on you forcefully or train you in anything specific. Honestly, everyone just doesn't care about you. The only thing is you're a fair-skinned tourist, so you'll get to skip the line. That's it. That's all the privilege you get.
But what is it related to? With the fact that you could potentially make some big donations, right? So is this also a commercial thing?
Yeah, you can take action. No one is forcing you to do it. No one is forcing you. Well, I get it.
But you're more likely to be that way than some Indian who probably doesn't even have the opportunity.
Yeah, and we were like, forget it. What are we going to do? Let's listen to reality. Let's listen to the world. Let's search for something on the internet, some other options. It was sad, really. But that definitely didn't stop me. I just realized that it's not here.
So the intention kept holding on. Not at all. And I knew that somewhere he was waiting for you.
Yeah, and in the end, we lived there for a while longer, doing some practices that we understood in our own way. In any case, I was already a practitioner. I already knew something. We were already charged up. Meow. We had already moved on to prana and we conducted a course. together on our own. It's a 21-day course. Also, when that was popular, it was Slook, and I remembered what her name is. This was even before we left. We were soaking it all in. Well, let's do it. Well, let's do it. There's nothing to do. I was doing cleanses there, like prakshana, as they say, when you drink salty water and it just cleanses you through and through.
And where did you get the information about this? From books? Where did you find it?
All of that information came from books. And we started doing our own practices in our own understanding.
Being in India?
Yes, in the territory of India, completely, like fully, totally realizing, not even disappointed, but realizing that it's not here and not here. We don't want to sit with admiring eyes, looking at yet another guru who is just there. No, that's not it. And yes, we started doing practices and some processes began again. There were a lot of interesting magical stories. But these magical stories were our own individual ones, not in the sense that I'm hiding them. I actually talked about them, in the sense that it wasn't connected to any traditions or teachings. There, aliens almost abducted us. In short, there were a lot of funny moments. But all of this was born exclusively from our practices, which we, again, took from the clinic. And for the questions I went to find answers to, even more questions arose. Because, again, the practices yield results, but explanations for those results aren't found. And I say, well, okay, let's do it, to plan where we're going next. And she got in touch again through the forum.
How much time did you end up spending?
Half a year.
So did you decide to move on?
Yes, we decided to move on, and then we went to Thailand, because in Thailand it seems like there's Buddhism and there are temples and there are also ancient complexes there. I also wanted to, touch this just in case.
To take a run.
Yeah, to take a run. But again, we saw religion there. So we didn't see any opportunities for learning there. Yes, they'll accept you there, but they won't teach you. That's a really big difference when you're just sitting in a crowd and maybe enjoying the process. But you yourself don't change. In terms of your skill level, yeah, you might feel good there, you might enjoy being there, but your skill doesn't grow.
So what do you mean by mastery? Maybe it just takes longer, and you somehow change your thinking. Insights come to you that trigger reactions, and eventually you'll change. What were you missing? Specifically, some kind of physical practice. So you mean more like practical energy work?
I was missing exercises because everything I knew at that point I achieved through practice, not just sitting like this.
Well, it's not just sitting, it's about working with your consciousness, your state of mind, as I understand it. It's not just sitting after all.
At that time, I knew that thinking was harmful. At that time, I knew that the best state is when the inner dialogue is turned off.
Well, that's exactly.
When it turned off and when my consciousness started to move, I saw things that I didn't understand. And no one could explain them to me. Not because, well, they didn't want to. It just didn't come together. There wasn't an opportunity to ask about it. Maybe they do know. Well, actually, they do know. I later realized the level, they just don't care. They're already done. They're just within themselves and they're simply present and they won't teach you anything. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that if you want to learn, then that's not the place to go. There, you can just be filled with it. Well, yes.
To be filled with it, that's a good word. So what happens next? Well, that's it.
And then you go back to Moscow and turn into an ordinary person. And that didn't suit me. I didn't want to go back to all of my...
What did you want from that? Just some kind of achievement, some point of no return, or what? Or did you already set the intention back then that you want to become immortal, right?
I had no tatal. I didn't have that intention, although I was already well aware from a young age that I was a person of death and I didn't like it.
Something needs to be done
just at some point through my head, just like it has for a huge number of people, the information came that there is reincarnation, so don't worry about it. It's all good. No need to fuss about anything. You'll die, and then you'll be born again. And I was like, well, okay, one less problem, even though it's questionable. But all right, like Pinikov said, and it's true, that it turned out to be not okay at all, and my doubts were confirmed. But at that moment, I was calm about it, thinking, well, if it's reincarnation, then it's reincarnation. But even since childhood, I understood that we are mortal and this can't go on forever, what we're doing here. And when you arrive in a country, in a system, and nothing happens at the speed that would satisfy you, you're like, no, it needs to be faster, it needs to be more efficient. Because the practices I did on my own, without a teacher, without helpers, without any group or team, just reading them from a book worked much faster and more effectively. So why did I come here then? Everything is too slow. That's not what I wanted. And it wasn't in my plans that I would come here, learn, and then go back.
No. So what were your plans?
In my plans, it was definitely to come, learn, and stay.
And become a master myself, or what? Stay in what capacity? In what status?
Like a monk, perhaps.
So you really wanted to dedicate your whole life from now on
to this? Not from now on, but I was striving for that from the very beginning, because I understood perfectly well that in society, in the usual space with a lot of people, this doesn't exist. It's not just little, it doesn't exist. And what exists there is just a show from the little gnomes that we will clean up for you now. And the truly worthy practitioners I found, well, more or less we were on the same level. That is what the person told me, who, damn, is cool, well done. I also had the same thing. He was like, oh, well, I mean, we're still more or less the same. And is only one. Again, in my memory, there was only one person who was head and shoulders above everything I know. But he was somehow strange. That's it. And we decided to move forward. That's it. India was done.
Where did you set your course?
The Urals, Ashram.
Was it an unexpected decision, or had you considered it as well?
Actually, we didn't have any specific direction. We didn't have any expectations for a particular place. We were just looking for a bearer of knowledge, someone who has mastery. We were looking for a teacher. And my friend was messaging on forums on the internet. She was in touch with some woman who said, well, yeah, we're here. We live in the Urals and practice healing. A crowd of people is walking around. I'm already tired of them all. We're more into Castaneda there. It was, a quick way to explain where you stand in esotericism. Well, someone says, well, that's Buddhism. Well, everything's clear with him. Well, I was talking about being alone. Well, that makes sense. Castanedism. Well, Castanedism is clear. Or those Cosmobiva there, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's it. So in a way, this community had labels. So we had the label of being Castaneda followers. And when we recognized that label like this...
Recognize it?
Yeah, they showed us and they were like, yeah, we completely agree with you. So we were like that too.
Come over.
We're like, well, what do you say? We're heading back. So we're heading back. It turns out we returned. We're heading to the Ural. That's it. They're already waiting for us there. They're welcoming us. A guy, Maximich, greets us and we start chatting. Yeah, the same topics. Yeah, he's a serious practitioner. He surpasses us in abilities. But his topic is healing. We were like, do we really need this or not? Still, again, the request was to understand how the world is arranged and how I am arranged. Well, healing, okay, it will allow me to understand how I am arranged, but not how the world is arranged. And so this kind of dissatisfaction starts again. Well, not this, yeah, cool, yeah, the guy is real, absolutely real.
It seems like it, but it's not.
A very serious person, yeah. He's probably one of the first people who truly excelled, and significantly at that. And they were, how to put it, not just in our eyes like that, they were in everyone's eyes who was there. And even those people who came not to learn but to heal, all confirmed his status as a top-notch master.
So were you in the status of his students, or what?
No, we were in the status of contenders for all of this.
Contenders. For future healers? For apprenticeship? Well, even contenders for apprenticeship.
Yes. And we just couldn't take that last step and say, yes, we want to learn.
Was it up to you? Of course. Not what he says. Just wait a moment.
He accepted us. He said, yeah, guys, no problem. I'll teach you.
So you yourself didn't dare.
We couldn't bring ourselves to do it. Yeah, because deep down, both she and I understood that it wasn't right. It wasn't the way it should be. The limit is felt, it's visible, but the limit is not. And there were, again, a lot of magical stories. That's where I first saw energy, one of the very first times I saw it. Just like that, I saw it. I had never seen them so clearly and realistically before. I saw something there, once again, something inexplicable to me that came to interact with me, and I didn't know how to handle it because I was confused.
But you couldn't ask that person over tea, just like that. I would like to clarify a couple of points.
He had a very interesting position, like that it's like, this is yours. You have to figure it out yourself. How am I supposed to figure this out? Well, as for healing, yes, there he taught, no questions asked, herbs, potions, or cures.
Well, it's a practical kind of story.
Yeah, and as for what happens without his involvement, like what fills you up, it just performs some techniques. No, that's yours. You have to handle that. This is your experience. This is your feeling. I won't be there.
But you, it turns out, continued to practice the future as a deciding potential healer. You continued with the practices, as a result of which you had those experiences again.
Yeah. Again, those experiences, those perceptions, altered states of consciousness, all of that.
There were even more questions than answers.
Yeah, and the more we engaged in this, in those quite sacred places, the stronger the effects were.
Are you talking about some physical locations? Physical locations, yes. And where was it in the Urals, since the Urals are so big?
Southern Ural, it's near Mount Yermel, Little Yermel. And this, by the way, is also a place of power. And we went on a hike, well, more like a hike. We were at the source of the river. We set up tents, lived there, and once again used techniques for transitioning to pranic nourishment. We would turn it on, then off, then on again, playing with them. We used it again, we reached very subtle states again, and the effects from the practices happened again. Basically, these ascetic practices yielded results, such serious, tough, dangerous, I would even say, ascetic practices. But they yielded results, and these results were just mind-blowing. Even though I was already quite experienced in these processes, it was still like seeing something again, like something entered your consciousness again, like you touched it again, just like your own hand. What is this? So how do you fit all of this into a worldview? My worldview just wasn't coming together from these pieces at all. They were just these periodic experiences, incredibly intense, incredibly real, that just couldn't fit into a coherent picture. And the person we were with there either didn't want to or didn't know himself. So we couldn't satisfy that need.
Why was it so important for you to find answers to these questions? Why didn't just observing the process satisfy you? For example, okay, I do the practices, I see something, it's just another piece, and over time, I guess I'll put it all together into a bigger picture. Why is it that you have this, I'm trying to understand the nature of this burning desire, this need to find, to do, to know?
You know, it probably looks very strange right now, but I realized that I was getting older. I mean, I saw my parents aging, I saw how my body was changing, and I understood perfectly well that if I didn't hurry and if I didn't succeed, well, yeah, I would just be sitting there feeling fulfilled, but then what?
But you probably assumed that you would transition, leave your physical body, and go somewhere where there would definitely be a lot more answers.
You know, when I was outside of my physical body, it became increasingly clear to me that something was off with these reincarnations. I have encountered death several times in my life, not by my own initiative. When I was a child, I was struck by lightning. That was the first time I encountered death.
You were struck by lightning as a child. How old were you?
It was right at the dacha. It was also around the age of kindergarten or early elementary school. I'm completely serious. Even in the tree, there's a burned spot where my head was.
Could it have done that to you? Your abilities?
You know, I didn't start levitating after that.
Well, I didn't start levitating. I only left my body at 12. Then I read Castaneda at 16. And by 17, I was already going out into the astral, just walking around. Just that.
I can only say that, well, it all happened during Divi's viewing because, well, how could I have? There is no way to do it specifically. It's just circumstances. The circumstances that happened to me, and it wasn't because of those circumstances that I became interested in this. I've always been, well, as always, when it started.
For you to become interested, you would have had to be struck by lightning, so to speak, giving you some kind of charge, an impulse. I don't know, I think it's...
The spirit knows better how to deal with me, so, well, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, you're telling all this, and it's so clear to see this chain, how one thing leads to another, at least to me. I hope it's very obvious to the viewers too.
Well, maybe it was some kind of work.
A chain of random coincidences.
In any case, when a person strives for something, reality helps them. Even if lightning strikes you on the head, that's also...
But someone has to spark your desire. Like, so where exactly does this initial impulse come from?
I don't even know. I just realized at some point that I needed to figure out how the world works. I just realized that my grandparents will die. My parents will die, and I will die. And I had a request, maybe there's a way to make it so it doesn't have to be like that. Well, those are really childish thoughts. There you go. And I can't say it's something unique because people come to me and we talk about different topics. They also share what they quickly understood, that this is how it is here. They never felt like they were, not everyone tells me this, but other people tell me stories like that. So I can't really consider it something unique, but lightning struck me, that's true.
Rather something individual and special, probably. Unique not in the sense of being better or worse than someone else. Just, original.
What happened, happened. That's how it is. Yeah, then when I was a bit older, I almost drowned. The second encounter with death. When I left my body stopped breathing. The third encounter with death. And when I left my body stopped breathing. And it stopped breathing because I used the technique to exit on the exhale. It's a powerful technique, but my body exhaled and that was it. And that's it. I just stayed in that state. I disconnected from it. I'm no longer in control of it. And I felt how it starts to crush you, just flatten you. You physically feel it. Yeah, you're in your energy body, but you physically feel how it just flattens you. And what's happening, I'm familiar with that state, familiar with that feeling, but lightning didn't strike me. I didn't drown. What's happening? Why has it started again? This hustle and bustle pulled me back into my body again, and it's lying there, not breathing. I can't do anything with it, can't move, can't twitch. The only thing I could manage was to take that first deep breath, and then everything was fine. I seemed to start breathing again, but how fine? For another week, I felt like I had been really poisoned by something. So the aftermath was really significant after that. Well, either I was poisoned by alcohol or by some low-quality food. So I felt really bad, everything hurt. I had a headache, my skin hurt, I don't know, even my eyes hurt. So it was unpleasant, and I spent another week recovering from that. But that's all nonsense. Death itself, the contact with death itself, is not what I was told, not how it was painted for me. It was painful, it was scary. And it was a clear awareness that, this is the expectation and the reality. So the expectation is that angels will come and take you away, and the reality just crushes you, it hurts. Not at all. And I wasn't given answers to these questions. Why is that? All right, fine, the villas came for you, but why is it like this for me?
And where did you decide to go then? Were you still with your girlfriend back then?
Yes, we're still together. In the end, we were together for 7 years. And I'm like, well, what's going on? I say, isn't it working out for us with the students? I said, well, let's dig in somewhere far from people and try to make it on our own. I had this idea back then that if I built a monastery for myself and went into it, everything would suddenly be fine. I was wrong back then. And in the end, we made another fateful decision, a choice that was ultimately and irrevocably ruined our relationship. And that fateful decision was nothing less than to move even further and deeper into the remote and isolated mountains and dig in as far away, as distant from any nearby settlement or community as possible. Buy land, build a house. We bought a car, a truck, loaded it up with everything that we might theoretically need to set up our daily life. But we settled down, bought land in the mountains, and moved in, without any power lines, of course, without sewage, without water, without anything. It was just a piece of land.
Just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
It was in Altai, right?
It was in Altai. And that was normal in our understanding of the world. It was great. We were both in our 20s. You just buy a plot of land next to the forest in the middle of a field and start building there.
So you were planning to build a house and live there yourselves?
Well, no, we were actually planning to hire people, workers. Yes, by our own efforts, to organize everything there by ourselves. I set up electricity there. We bought solar panels. We set up batteries, then we installed a wind generator. At first, there was a temporary cabin. We built a big house, and then the money problem started. We had to sell the car and buy a simpler one to make ends meet. Earning isn't great, the money is running out. The construction too. How can I put it? Not the most honest people.
What was the plan? That's also quite... Well, throughout this whole story, you were a very sensible person and maintained some connection to reality.
Despair.
But here, so despair was driving you. What were you hoping for?
I was hoping that if I could create this little house for practices, then finally breathing out inside it, I would be able to fully immerse myself in the processes that I couldn't learn through books anymore, except by doing it myself. So, just sitting, meditating, leaving the body, traveling through the layers of existence, reaching out to the gods. Well, there's nothing left to do on my own anymore.
What there?
Don't rely on hope.
What to wear? Where was any crime anticipated or not anticipated? So were you planning to somehow monetize this?
I didn't plan anything at all. I had computer skills. I helped the local village guys set up their computers. You can't say that there were poor people there. They had a farm, they had livestock, they sold it, and they had money. And they used my services in areas where they didn't understand anything at all. It was mostly computers.
So some side jobs did happen after all. Yeah.
There were side jobs and there was bartering. So we didn't even fight with anyone. There wasn't a plan to fight with anyone before. There was no plan to prove anything to anyone. There was a plan to isolate myself and fully immerse in studying the universe on my own. That was the plan.
What percentage would you say you have approximately accomplished?
Well, we studied one aspect of the universe in great detail and extremely well there.
So in the end, you built something that you wanted. Yeah, we built a house there. You lived there and you were practicing there 5 years.
In the end, we were there. I was there for all 5 years, but she left a bit earlier, a year earlier, because that was already the finish line. You know what I've realized? What if you build a house in the wilderness? Then you won't have time to meditate in it, because everyday life will completely consume you and no one will do that for you. You chop wood, you saw the tree because no one wants to saw that tree for you. All right, go buy that firewood, but you need to pay for it right away. You prepare all of that. You keep an eye on cleaning the pipes in the stove because it's always running. These are the mountains. It's -50 in winter. Well, hello there. For about 2 weeks, the temperature consistently dropped to around -50 at night. It's no joke. I mean, if you leave something plastic outside and try to bring it into the house, it just falls apart right away. And something was always breaking in that house. Something was always going wrong. Sometimes the pipes would freeze or the sewage drain would get frozen. We were still building a comfortable home for ourselves. And so you keep doing all this, doing, and there's no end to it. You fixed this for me here, and then something broke over there. And I went there, and while I was walking, I saw that, this is about to start breaking down soon. And it just completely consumed me. I just, went through a year or two thinking, well, I'll meditate now. I'll meditate now, just looking at all this in the wilderness, and it never ends. Moreover, I had enough effort, the ability to put in that effort and still work to keep that space in a livable condition. But then there are moments when the stove goes out. You feel the house starting to freeze and you say, to hell with it all. And just crawl under the blanket, putting another pillow on top. Not just on the pillow, but on top to keep your head warmer. And you just wait for dawn to come.
Until spring comes. Nevertheless, it was 5 years. So it required a lot of patience. So if after a year or two you already understood what it was all about, you still stayed there, what's keeping you there?
The tension was everywhere. Everything was tense and terrible in the relationship. In everyday life, it was tense and terrible. The money is already gone. So they didn't just run out, they simply ran out because it was impossible to structure your activities in a way that you could replenish faster than you were spending. It was a disaster. It was just a disaster. And everything I was going there for, I'm going to learn it there now. Well, I learned at the same time there were still magical stories, cool situations, great connections. I met a guy who was also from Moscow who left for the same reason. The truth is they were on the other side of the valley. And I'm like, listen, I say, we need to figure out how to live. Let's come up with something. In the end, we came up with a company. We opened a business selling solar panels, wind generators, and batteries. And with a few other slightly crazy people who came to a wide open field, we just started selling this stuff like guys.
It's a very niche audience.
Yeah, we had to do something. They didn't understand anything about it at all, but I already had it working. So at least I could come, install it, and I knew where to buy it cheaper. Back then, we were actually bringing in those batteries from Bulgaria. Well, we transported them, meaning they carried them to the warehouse in Moscow themselves, and we organized the transport from the warehouse in Moscow to Altai. And so people come in, right? And we showed them these prices. The official representatives of solar energy, they're like, and we were like, hey, how about we bring you those batteries for 4 times cheaper? I said, let's do it. And that was it. We were already supplying the panels, doing the setups, the launches, all that stuff. So little by little, things started to move, but it was still clear that it wasn't happening here and not here either. You can't handle it on your own because daily life just crushes you.
Teachers there, well, what kind of teacher is there? Yes, there's Mount Beluga over there. Yeah, the energy there is insane, but so what? Well, yeah, you can come and have some deep emotional experience again, see something, interact with something, and still have no way to integrate it into your daily life. All right, I'll go dig something else. And my shovel doesn't dig any better because of that. Do you understand? And everything I experienced, I just couldn't integrate it into my regular everyday life. That was also a tough fact.
Well, how did you want the shovel to dig by itself, or how did you envision this integration? What exactly?
There was no understanding at all. It just seemed like it should be better if you feel more.
So you were looking for something, but you don't get it yourself. What seek?
I know. No, I understand. I wanted to understand how the world works. I wanted to know how I'm structured.
So why weren't you satisfied? The world is arranged in such a way that you come to the mountain. You feel these senses a bit better and you go digging with more joy. Then it ends again and you come back to the mountain. Again, I mean, some people would be satisfied with that, as many people are satisfied with it.
I would have preferred to come back after I had already dug it up. After all, these must be some extraordinary states, some illogical effects. And there were effects. There were situations, magical, truly magical situations, when you think, well, has something really started? But it's like a snap and then 2 years of silence. So, it's like all of this was teasing you. So you work hard, and then you're like, well, what's next? Yeah. And then something happens again. Yeah, okay, I need to gather myself. I need to, but very rarely. And I wanted to take control of it, to understand how it works, to figure out how it's structured, where things should flow within me so that everything here happens better, faster, and more efficiently.
So you really had a connection with the ability to control reality, essentially. That's what was bothering you.
Well, of course. Because I'm telling you again, it has always been obvious to me that you can't just disregard the material world. Even living somewhere in the mountains of Altai, everyday life just consumes you. We didn't pay any bills, no interest, no loans, nothing. So there was no pressure from the government on us. We were on our own. Well, despite that, it was tough. Even the fact that you don't have to pay for anything didn't help at all. Moscow pay?
Well, that's true. You just live in Altai in the middle of a field, of course.
In Moscow, you pay for the apartment, for gas, for electricity, everything.
You don't need that. You don't dig holes.
You don't have to dig holes. And this, by the way...
And the pump's there, and the path is usually laid out for you.
Yeah, and you don't see that while you're here. When you find yourself in a space where there's nothing and no one comes to demand everything from you, it turns out to be much more complicated than here, where you can just say, okay, take it. But you use everything.
But there's the metro. Yes. And how did the story about Altai end?
Being there, diving into all of it, realizing that this is also some kind of...
half measure.
It's not just a half measure, it's another one of my illusions that shattered into pieces. Once again, I realized that I don't understand anything, that I have some ideas about the expectations of the reality of this meme. Again, we can't escape from it. And while I was there, I found out that this person who was leading the practical energy work, in the end, well, I mean, he already knew me, I had already talked to him, I had calmed down, like this. Well, I started learning, to be honest, if I really say it. But I didn't see him as a teacher, yet I had already started learning at that moment. And suddenly we find out that apparently he was on Skype. Skype had already appeared. We're like, oh, we want that too. Well, all right, I remember you. Come on in. And so he starts doing these broadcasts. He shows these states. I'm discovering for myself that apparently this actually works. He's there, we're here, and I still feel all of it. I still see and sense it within myself. I was like, wow, so what's the point of all those pirouettes we were doing all over the world? And he starts the training in a very detailed manner. He commences to show all of this gradually and steadily. And my worldview, once again, starts to, transform. It's about transforming from the experience I already have. And when he voices my experience out loud and says, this is how it's right and this is how it's wrong, I say, yes, that's right. And that's wrong because I've already gone through it. I'm thinking, damn, he really gets it. He really knows what he's talking about. And he gets it. Not about some ephemeral things, but about my life. He understands me. He didn't talk about my life. He just, someone asked him a question and he answered it like, how it should be. Listening to this. Yeah, as I listen to it and go through my life stages, I say, yes, that's how it is. He's speaking the truth. And it touched me so much, it continued to kindle my fire so much that to hell with this all time, to hell with this everyday life, I can practice, I can finally move forward and enjoy it. Not to suffer, not to do some kind of asceticism again, just squeezing myself dry. And I'm breaking the pattern, and you're sitting there relaxed, listening to his voice, searching for those processes within yourself, and that's it. Nothing more is needed. I'm like, damn, he knows what he's talking about, and he's saying the right things, and they're spot on. Who is this guy anyway? What traditions are we talking about? So I became really interested in his personality, like where did he even come from? In the end, everything got really bad for us on a daily level. We honestly just sat down and I said, I can't take it anymore. That's it. She says, I haven't been able to take it for a long time now. No matter what you do, that's it. It's all over. In the end, she leaves. I'm not tearing my hair out because we've just, it's like this. We just needed to take a break from each other.
She's not just leaving, you're breaking up.
Yeah, she's leaving with the plan that I'm moving forward on my own. Well, yeah. Well, of course it hurt. Of course it was hard, but what we got into was even harder, and that tipped the scales. Like to keep the relationship, to hold on. I also wanted to be alone so that no one would bother me. We're tired. Yeah, we're just tired.
So in the end, your girlfriend is leaving, right?
She's leaving me there all alone. She says, that's it for me.
Were you ready to stay there alone?
But I had nowhere to go. Where would I go from there? All my stuff is here. Of course, there's still my parents' house, but this is Moscow. It's back to work. It's the same old thing again. So it turns out that this whole pirouette I went through brought me back to the same place where I started.
Well, you're completely different now.
Well, yes, that was certainly a factor, but I didn't want it that way. Well, I didn't want it that way, that's all. But I still wanted to move forward. And in the end, I'm writing to Ashen.
So wait, just to clarify, this person is Ashen.
Yes, that's him.
The one you knew for many, many years before, the one you saw, the one you argued with, is that Ashan?
It's all the same person.
Uh-huh. And you? So he breaks back into your life like that, and you recognize him, and you continue to interact via Skype.
It's more like we're breaking into his life rather than him finding us. She just kept learning from him. She was originally acquainted with him.
But didn't you continue?
I kind of went to those practices, but I didn't see them as my path, I was still on my own wavelength.
So all this time, the teacher was at a distance, reaching out with his hands. But you couldn't recognize it right away. Did you need that?
I was just being an idiot, eating shovels full of snow, choking on it, but still scratching away in the way I thought was right, the way I understood in my foolish head.
And how did the moment happen when you... And was there ever a moment like, this is my teacher, I'm going to go with him for a part of my journey? Did you make such a decision?
My first decision was, again, all of this was happening in Altai. Winter was approaching again. I understood that right now it would just be running around from morning till night just to survive. To keep the house from freezing, to keep the pipes from freezing, to keep everything from freezing. And I understood the hopelessness of this situation. I just called him, not acknowledging him at all before that. I called and said, well, basically it's like this. I said, I want to come and learn. I said, I can't imagine how to do that. I'm at the altar, I have a house, a household, and there were a few animals. Just like that, not locking the house and walking away. I said, I don't know how to do this, but out of everything I've chosen for myself throughout my life, this is what deeply resonates with me the most right now, at this particular moment in time. Right? Yeah, not from the mind, but truly from the heart. Even though I didn't know what I was signing up for, I didn't know where I was going.
And how long did the training last, approximately?
Well, as soon as I stepped onto the temple grounds, 6 years had passed. Before that, I had known him for about 4 to 5 years, just like that. Well, in the context of practical medicine.
One time when you called him on Skype, you said, I want to come to you to learn.
Yeah, I said, that's it. I'm no longer a person on Skype. I don't want these temporary classes every few months anymore. I said, I want to learn. I want to become a student. He told me to go to hell. Really, yeah, he said, what are you talking about? Where to? I already have students. Why where you're sitting there in Altai, just sit, practice, everything's fine. And what did I tell him? No, I'm not going. I made a decision. I said I won't back down. My resilience, this commitment to what I set out to do, hasn't gone anywhere. Yes, I admitted that I had done a lot of unnecessary things. Yeah, I crashed into that house on the outskirts and realized, what the hell did I do this for? But my resilience hasn't gone anywhere. And my toughness, my stance, on the contrary, became more and more uncompromising. And when I was talking to him, it was uncompromising. For both him and me, he felt it. And he said, well, okay, I'll definitely do the puja today.
What does that mean?
Puja is when you go out. Well, it's like calling on Skype, let's say, to the gods. Well, actually, if we're going to speak in adult terms, yeah, not with these childish words, it's a kind of ritual action that allows you to send a request and get a response. And the request was very simple. He asked reality how it feels about me, how much I can be trusted, and how far my determination would take me to fit into all of this in the grand scheme of things, in this complex world, and the intricate dynamics involved. But I didn't really understand what I was supposed to fit into and the various elements at play. I just knew that he was probably the only person I had any trust in, and the multifaceted nature of reality. It's not that there's nothing left, it's that there is, because I have long been disillusioned with India, with all these women, with all these, yeah, there were good masters, there were knowledgeable masters. I learned a lot from them, and I wasn't disappointed in them, but there was simply nothing else to take. There was nothing more to learn, so I just moved on. And this one person was there, whose depth I didn't understand.
It's unclear.
You didn't feel a ceiling there, did you? Yeah, I didn't feel that there was something we would quickly bump into. So there wasn't a complete system there where there's a beginning and end and you'll be able to do it like this. I constantly felt that there was something more there. So I called him, told him, and he told me to get lost and said he wasn't going.
Was all of this within one phone call?
Yeah. I said I was both in despair and in a kind of inner hopelessness at the same time. And at the same time, determined. So it's not the kind of despair where I don't know what to do, but I'm in despair, yet I definitely know what I'm going to do next. I called him, he says, okay, I'll do the puja. Well, I'll take a look at you, who you really are. And that's it. And the night passes. I hardly slept. It's definitely hard to remember.
Was it an exciting moment for you?
Nostalgia.
It's absolutely very beautiful.
And in the morning, he wrote to me that reality basically is on your side, and that's it.
So what did you feel?
And that's it. I don't know, I'm experiencing it again right now. It was a very intense experience when you're striving for something, you're reaching for it, and nothing works out. Everything is falling apart, everything is crumbling, and at some point you feel like this seems to be it. It seems like I've found it. Is this really it? Even when you don't want to believe it, there's this feeling, you know, like you've relaxed. I experienced that feeling, you know, like I had already come home, although nothing happened. He just wrote, that's how it is. And I'm like, okay, so what do I need to do? No instructions, nothing was there. The night passes. I have this answer in my hands. Nothing really changed quickly, in my opinion. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll just go about my daily business. Again, what else do I have left? Out of the blue, messages come in on VK. I'm this and that with my brother, and we want to stay in Altai. Do you have a place? I'm like, wait a second. I say, how long do you want to stay in Altai? Well, he says, for the winter. I ask, what are the conditions? Oh, like just to be completely alone, to be away from everything. I say, listen, I have a house here. It'll probably be empty. Maybe you could just move in, and on the condition that you take care of it, and you wouldn't need to change anything else. He's like, no way, are you serious? I'm ready to drop everything and come right now. A person just wrote to me on VK, out of nowhere, out of the void.
Not a friend? This came after you made the decision that you were leaving, that you wanted to study.
It was right on that same day after that night. When Ashan wrote to me that reality is on your side.
Well, that's when you made the decision that you were going no matter what.
I've already made that decision. I was already ready to go. I didn't understand how to do it. I just didn't understand how I could leave the house for the winter and go away. I realized that when I come back, there won't be anything left of the house. I needed someone to move in there. So I understood perfectly well that I wouldn't be able to find a tenant. I couldn't rent it out. I couldn't hire a caretaker, because how is this caretaker going to survive here? And then a person writes to me, someone out of nowhere, who just says, just let me live in this house and I don't need anything else. And I'll come with money. I have everything of my own. Just let me live there to spend the winter. So basically we agreed right away. I said, okay, take it all. I'm packing up immediately, trying to find the last few coins I need to cover the trip. And I'll write to Ashen saying, I'm going. He says, well, I know I want to. Well, that's it. And I arrived.
But did you already know where to go? Were you informed?
Yes, of course. I already knew where to go. And I arrive, I settle into this little room and I start learning. And I was learning, and there was no end in sight. And I had not the slightest doubt. Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, there were various incidents. Yeah, I needed to step out, catch my breath for a moment, but there was no doubt at all.
So what do the learning processes look like in general? So are there actually some lectures or practices there? Does it resemble how you imagined the learning process and getting closer to the truth?
Yes, it was a comprehensive training right from the start. There were martial arts for physical development. It's like gymnastics, but very intense, serious gymnastics. No one was turning you into a killer who masters all kinds of weapons, although that's implied. It was specifically used to keep your body in shape, to get your joints moving, your muscles working, to stimulate the lymphatic system, and to ensure your capillaries were functioning so that you were developed on a physical level. There was Sanskrit, there was the art of massage, caloric marmotherapy. It was called that there was an in-depth study of the various components that were used for this massage. So these health techniques and methodologies, there were meditations, of course, there were mantras, there were rituals. It was all very comprehensive. So they were training us to be carriers already, and nothing could be recorded. Either you know how to do it or you keep learning.
So is it like a daily routine, classes or something?
It was indeed, certainly. The start of some course was announced. That's it. And people would gather and take this course. Of course, there were martial arts classes. Please go there on a regular basis. By the way, I can't take out the gold and throw it away. But of course, everything had to be done in a traditional style. It's not like you just kick the door open and start huffing and puffing in the hall. No, it was all beautiful. It was all elegant. Movement. Well, I didn't show that because I went in a different direction, but I also studied all of this. I absorbed it all and practiced. And so, even being outside of that temple, I still sought out opportunities and physical activities to maintain some level of fitness. And not to overlook other aspects either, so they don't fade from my memory. What I chose, that's what I'm showing. So it's energy, it's the ability to engage in these processes while being completely still.
It was taught directly by Ashan.
He taught everything.
Yeah, no one else taught anything there.
That was not implied at all in any case. It wasn't even implied that anyone would try to teach you anything without going through Ashan. No, just him. He has always been a source. Yeah, he could say, look, you need to do this and that, and if you want to know how to do it, talk to him. Because there were a lot of very old students there, you could say.
Well, I mean, that's your classmate. He's like your student who is also very...
Yeah, to a person who also practices, well, he's been practicing there for, say, 10 years. I just arrived. And of course, Shana...
You be together. You have a different level of preparation.
I really don't care. Sit, grunt, pull, nobody cared. Sometimes they would build up such strong energy that I felt like I was being pushed into the wall. Everything hurt, my head hurt, my chest hurt, like there was just an elephant standing on me. I was sitting in a semi-conscious state, but I was kind of propping myself up with my hands, building geometry, sitting there, enduring. No way. That's all.
So there's the senior group, the middle group, and the graduates. There's nothing like that there?
No, there were cycles. For example, a certain number of crazy people just gathered in their determination, and the course starts over. Everyone comes to him.
And how much time does the course require? So how long is the course?
It mainly lasted a year.
And if you were there for 6 years, then 6 years can also...
It spun around 6 times, but that's just a part of the whole system. When you go around this circle after completing the whole circle,
the training in practical energy is the same, right? You have the opportunity to claim practices that, for example, were only for... You see, there was also a hierarchy of student, non-student there. And it was a very serious hierarchy. So when I showed up there, I wasn't a student. He just let me in. He let me in to learn.
Oh, so being a non-student is before becoming a student, not after, right? First, you're not a student, then you become a student. Well, that's basically it.
And then over time, you just become a companion. No longer a student again.
Are there such people that...
Well, as of today, he did all of this right before my eyes. I watched all these people grow and move into different statuses. I observed all of this. I was forming myself in it all. It's not like I came in and everything was ready. No, there was nothing there. Everything was ready. All of this continued to develop. And since then, he built another temple that is much more majestic, beautiful, and serious in its geometry. Again, I know where he is, but we'll never know that I still haven't gone there myself. These are different points on the planet. And this, I mean, it's a temple, but in reality, you'll be passing by it and you won't even realize it's a temple. And it's a closed system. There's no need for a congregation there. They need madmen there. You know how there are, for example, conscripts and special forces. That's the special forces. And both of them are not taken there. And the conscripts, well, yes, you'll be called up, whether you like it or not.
So what is the purpose built into this system? So who is he looking for? People who want to master this knowledge to do what next? To carry it further to humanity? To teach further? Just basically to sit and practice? What is the continuation?
To truly realize your intention?
To be able to realize your intention in any area of life?
No, to break free from this cartoon that we all find ourselves in.
So this is exactly the intention. We discussed at the beginning, when you were introduced to becoming a body of light. Do everyone there have the same intentions? Only people with such an intention are allowed in there.
Without such an intention, you won't even be able to feel that group in space. You won't be able to synchronize with her. But you see, I've always called it, I want to know what the world is all about. And I wasn't satisfied with achievements in this world. I wanted to know what it was all about. Is it even worth achieving this or not? In general, where should one strive to go here? Maybe the great achievement here is to just sit and be embalmed like some Buddhist monks do. Or maybe the great achievement is just to enjoy life, hang out, and die just like everyone else. I didn't know how to behave properly here. I didn't know what the meaning of what was happening was. Do you understand? And suddenly I'm told there's really no point in leaving here. You know, it's like you enter the video game and they tell you here are different classes, here are different bosses, here's different weapons. And you say, wait, how do you turn off this game? And so everything that this game gives you doesn't matter to you. And that's where people gather who don't intend to play this game. They are about to leave it. Well, you can't just leave it on your own will. You have to put in effort. You have to initiate a lot of processes. And you have to raise your level of freedom to such heights every time.
But when we die a natural death, we not leave the developed game.
No, of course not.
It's not about that at all, literally.
No, you see? Again, I really like video games because everything here is so similar. You can kill a video game character, but they'll just respawn. Yeah, you can start the game over, but you're still inside the game. There are games where if you die, you get a new world, a new character, some new random traits, but you're still in the game.
So it turns out that if you just die like everyone else, let's say, you end up after death in a new game, just a different one, or what?
There are different moments in time. Right now we are in the Kali Yuga. Most people, about 99%, well, okay, 95% will in general stop their development after death.
That's it. And there won't even be any spirits, those souls.
We have, besides our physical body, a part of consciousness that is realized here. This part of consciousness, after living a material life, meaning after playing this game, at the moment of death, in most cases, spasms, crystallizes, and sinks to the very bottom of the universal egg. And there lies like the ashes of a cremated person.
A pebble.
Like ash, dust, a little crystal.
So, do you want to preserve your intention? To keep that part of consciousness after the physical body dies and consciously transfer it somewhere?
Yeah, I'm definitely not planning to die at all. I'm planning to be reborn.
As whom? As a human?
No, not as any kind of human. A person is a creation of Brahman, it's a created world, it's virtual reality, it's his dream. I want to wake up from this dream. Look, when you come out of your mom, is there something that connects you to her besides shared genetics and some psychological of interpersonal relationships?
Well, formally, no one is.
Formally, no, you're everything. You've become self-sufficient. But when you're living inside your mom, you can't even imagine that there's a space beyond her. The same thing. So did you die? Get out of it?
On the contrary, it turns out you were born.
And what were you doing inside? Were you dead inside?
No, you went through a certain stage of life.
In general, the harsh reality says that you've already lived a stage and you were just born again. First, you were born as a little worm in your dad. Then you were born as a symbiosis in the egg cell. Then you were born from your mom. And then for some reason, people stop and start telling stories. Then for some reason, they start telling you that you have to die and then you'll be born again. Have you ever died before? No, you were born, and born.
Did Oshan tell you that?
Yeah, it's obvious. That's how it really is. Well, just look around you. I don't know. Yeah, you can die at any moment, at any stage. Dad put on a condom. That's it. You died. There's no reincarnation there.
Well, there's no you there, just some kind of potential.
A particle of consciousness is already starting its material journey. Yeah, you don't see yourself as an adult, a fully formed woman, so what?
Listen, to avoid going off on a tangent, you led yourself to the question of death. Let's get back to Oshan. Did you have the chance to ask him a question?
Of course, and not just an opportunity. You can catch him at any moment, grab him, so to speak, out of the blue and start loading him with your very important topics.
Does he willingly engage in such contact? Or is he more like, think for yourself, all the answers are within you? He doesn't say it like that.
No, he really breaks it down like while you're asking him a question, he'll chew it over for you and choose his words carefully. He will explain it to you on all levels possible. But in most cases, when you go to them with your own question, by the time you're actually asking it, like saying the question out loud, you realize you're just rambling some crazy nonsense and something has taken you away, pulled you off course, and you really should just go practice instead. There you go, because those vibrations, those feels, that power manifested in him, it just blew everything away all at once. But somewhere, at some point, you're sitting in your little room and thinking, yeah, some nonsense might pop into your head. But sometimes you can be really stubborn, like I was, and I would write down my question on a piece of paper, come in, and read it to Ashan. And he explained, told stories, gave some examples, made analogies. And in the end, it's like, yeah, I got it all. And so what? Do I need to practice less after this? No less, it's all the same. But at least I calmed down and went on with a clear conscience, to keep practicing. And it's not to say that these are the most correct processes, but I've seen how other people approached him too, asking absolutely ridiculous questions. He calmly answered them, explained. Sometimes he would say, well, what? He says this. No one is asking anything. About an opinion. You're not doing anything again? You see, a person who does nothing doesn't ask questions. When a person does something, they encounter things they don't understand. And right away, you want to ask about it. When you achieve something that you haven't had before, you just want to share it, to tell someone about it, not even to ask, just to share. All of this was there. And he was always accessible, always just an arm's length away. Yeah, he could be busy with his own things, but no one stopped you from waiting until he finished and then talking to him again.
Can we say that he was a strict teacher? Or can we even characterize him in some way?
He was multifaceted.
Did he ever get angry, or did he ever...
He did everything.
Did he ever kick you out of class?
I definitely couldn't be kicked out, but I heard him say that...
I mean, did he actually say get out, or what?
He was right from here, just like that. Right from here. I was like, no, everything's fine. I gathered myself and just didn't exist.
Why? What were you doing that made you provoke yourself like that?
Now, right, I felt sorry for myself. I was trying to stir up that pity in him somehow. It was just, it cut off that instantly, just like that.
Not just in your case. You're not alone there, are you?
No, not alone. It was the same with the others. And it didn't matter at all whether it was an old student or a new one. It was a training system. And he was very multifaceted. He could yell so much that you just want to disappear somewhere in the basement. He could listen carefully to your completely idiotic nonsense and then explain for a long time how you're rambling and going completely off track. He showed himself from very different sides, and it was absolutely without inertia. So he could just crush you with all those heavy words, and that's it. And see how you would behave next. What exactly will you be able to do with that? And how precisely will you act?
You were there for 6 years. Why exactly 6?
Well, that's just how it turned out. I didn't count the years. And here you need to understand that I wasn't on the premises for all 6 years. I naturally left and came back. So this count started from the moment I arrived to actually apply for training.
So it turns out you did 6 rounds of these courses, let's call them. Or was it per year?
No, I actually did a lot more, because I was repeating some practices even before I got there. You see, I didn't become a student right away. That's a whole different story. I was there, I practiced there, but I wasn't a student. Just Ashram was loyal to me. I didn't even bring it up. I didn't say, Ashram, take me as a student.
So during all that time, you still didn't become a student?
I did. I'm just telling you, I lived there. I participated in all of it, but I wasn't an official student. I was just a person he let into the temple.
How one be official student?
What's the difference?
Is there a little book for you? Was that you registering?
No, there's a special initiation. It's a ritual that lasts all day. And while you're present at this ritual, you chant mantras and perform actions. You need to bring a lemon and, well, all right, just stick to the lemon. You need to bring a lemon and one more thing, an item. There you go. And that item you brought, the lemon, is placed on the altar. And all of this is left there. And then after that official part is over, when you've said all that, when you've acknowledged the person, there's also a funny moment there. There was also a funny moment with that. Basically, Ashram always said, I'm not taking any more students. I have enough of these. I don't need any new ones. Deep down, I understood, and he understood, that if you really clung to him, he would have to accept you anyway. But I didn't cling to that status because it wasn't important to me at all. For me, it was important to have access to knowledge, to have access to practices. That was the main thing for me. And I didn't bother him with that student thing. But other people were bothering him too, who were also gradually accumulating there. At some point, he said, all right, one last time. I'm ready to go through all of this, yes, to do this initiation. But he says, on the condition that you come to me as a student to repay your debts. It's a long explanation. But the point is that throughout your life, you end up owing a lot to many things. In general, it's not just about Ashram for the world. From that position, he was still willing to take on a student who would help repay those debts, not in the sense that you would be supporting Ashram. Oshan was extremely wealthy even without us. He knew how to earn money through his skills, and that's exactly how the position should have been. He says, well, I was present at that, of course. He says, under that condition, I'm still willing to deal with all of this one last time. He says, did you understand me? They understood. That's a what? Although inside I was thinking, what debts? I still didn't understand that. I was like, what debts? I came here to fulfill my intentions, not to repay some debts. And now the ceremony is underway. Oh, you had to wear a mundu there. This is special clothing. Well, it's a piece of fabric that you wrap around yourself like a skirt. But it's not a skirt, it's specifically a mundu. And everyone takes out their mundus and wraps themselves up. I'm like, I say, but I don't have any. She says, just go in pants already. I'm fed up with you. Well, because he just let me onto the territory there. And the people were already quite deep into the tradition. And so the ceremony begins. Everyone is standing in traditional clothing, and I'm standing there in some old rags because I had no money. Nothing at all. Asha walks in, looks at me and goes, oh, it's you. And then just moves on. And so the initiation into discipleship begins with the old disciple standing there. And then there's this shell is singing, there is this music, bells, there is incense, a fire is burning, there are these divine statues. It's beautiful, really. Everything is decorated with flowers. I mean, it's just an amazing celebration. So I approach, fold my hands, and Asha tells me a mantra in one ear, and I repeat it in the other ear, and he's like, well, why do you want this? It's very simple, divine, and something's buzzing in my head, I say, to fulfill my intention. You should have seen his eyes. You know, it's just the eyes of a demon, like, well, he warned me why it was necessary, what needed to be done. And I was just focused on my own. I even forgot. I honestly forgot and told him the truth. This is awesome. All right. And everything continued.
You ended up being initiated.
Yeah. but you should have seen his eyes. He was ready to roast me for that. Then I realized, I think I understood why and how all of this happened. He wanted, to make his path easier, but it didn't work out because at the moment of declaring my intention, I was completely sincere and spoke honestly. He had no other options left. That's it. He has nowhere to go because it's not about wanting or not wanting, It's exactly the process. And when it all ends, the temple closes, and those lemons that you held in your hand while saying those words, and then you place them down, they stay there for a certain number of days, a decent number of days. I don't remember exactly, maybe 15, maybe even more, just inside the building. And then he opens the temple and looks. And those people who were sincere, the lemons turn into something like stone. But they don't rot, they don't get moldy, they just become very hard like stone. It's really like they're made of stone. They're not actually stone, but they feel very hard, like, I don't know how to put it.
So how many stone lemons were there in the end?
Everything except one. One rotted. Yeah, and that person, whose lemon it was, left very quickly.
Well, I mean, it's not like your lemon rotted. Goodbye.
No, everyone just looked at it like that. I didn't understand anything back then. Later, when I became a student, Ashan started to dedicate these things. He says, well, do you remember this situation? So the lemon works in such a way that if a person is sincere, if they truly match the level that they will have to demonstrate here, then the lemon turns into a crystal. There you go.
And how many people were there of your classmates?
Listen, I don't really remember, but maybe there were like 7 or 6, not too many.
So not 150. No. Why? Really? That's serious?
There, mostly a group gathered for some serious events. About 30 people, like really serious ones, but in practice, well, around 20 something like that. Maybe even less, like 15, 20. No, and that's the thing, that only the madmen, only the absolutely determined, absolutely uncompromising people could handle all of this. And when the practices started, you're just sitting there and it seems like no one is demanding anything from you, but you can start feeling so awful. You just, I don't know, lose consciousness. Because this work with energies is not physical work. If you weren't prepared for this at all, I thought that I'm going to show off a bit here. Yeah, nothing like that. It flattened me just like everyone else. But over time, you get stronger, you adapt to all of this, and then you start to release it from yourself. But this is training. It's exactly training, conditioning, and nothing else. It's not like we just came, rang the bell, and walked in.
How did you realize that your training, which you spent a total of 6 years there, was enough? How did this even happen?
No, I didn't understand that. I didn't want to end it all. I felt good there. I was comfortable. I've absorbed everything already. I was already sitting there, proud, shining in all directions. Everything was just great for me. Well, but...
Did you get answers to all your questions? Yes, that's everything.
I was entrusted with all the most sacred things.
And the world understand?
Yeah, so I had no more questions. I only had a mismatch between my location and my goal. These were different places. And I just needed to move closer to the point of realizing my goal, which is what I'm doing now, because the goal is beyond reach. And basically, I just started to be there. I started to show off a bit, to assert some of my rights. I understood that it was all nonsense. I knew it was all wrong. But somehow it just came out, like a personality started to break free. And it was like, no, it's better to do it this way. And I realized, damn, what am I even saying? Why am I even saying this out loud? Well, it was starting to come out of me. And at some point, Ashan called me saying, well, it's time for you to go. And I knew he would call me. I could feel it. And I realized that I should have said myself that it was time for me to go.
What did he call about? Why didn't he tell you personally?
It was kind of like this, that at that moment I was in Moscow, or not on the territory. And they were starting a new cycle of practices there, and I was already there. I didn't need to be there.
And he was like, aren't you coming?
No, he told me, well, look, he says, either you do it the way I say, and that's not up for discussion anymore, or you're just ruining the process. So why are you doing this? Why are you suffering and making it hard for others? If you've already figured everything out, if you can be independent, then go live your life. That's it. Enough. Put it into practice. You studied for 5 years in college. How long can you just sit there, go work?
Wait, did people do something for 10 years? What were they doing there? Or did they not succeed that much?
It was just when I faced this myself that I suddenly realized there are students and there are non-students. And this plasma opened up for me when I found myself not being a student. Yes, there are people who, in principle, have access, can call him, can message him, can do some things with him. I came to the practice and I recently went to him for practice again. It was cool to go through it all over again, to complete the whole cycle once more. Probably practical energy. But at that moment, I wasn't his student. But I was once his student, and I looked at the people who were there, who didn't even understand what was happening. And I remembered the expressions of those present, whose status was unclear to me, but I thought they were also students. And so many years later, I essentially took their place, and I realized who they actually were. And that's not all.
So former students, there are students, alumni.
Yes, the former ones who have already left, achieved something, returned, but they came back not to learn, but just to practice, just to be a companion in this process. And as of today, Ashan has said that he no longer has any students at all. None, they're just not there.
And he doesn't mentor anyone.
And he doesn't take anyone, and there are none left. Only now, his students are teaching. This is how I, for example, teach now. And even if someone manages to get to him, he asks the question, how did you find out about me? Well, from that, just go back to him. I'm not going to show you anything, but at the same time, Ashan sometimes leads practices, and I happily attend them if I have the opportunity. Yes, there are times when I can't make it, but if I have the chance, I happily attend them and practice with pleasure.
And then, nevertheless, he called you and said that he had enough for you.
That was a long time ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like that.
Yeah, he called and said, well, that's it, your training is over, go on, apply what you've learned.
How did you react to that, although you say you were waiting?
He gave me a choice. He says, either you just shut up and do what I tell you, then fine, keep sitting. Although it's pointless, just keep sitting, okay? I'm not going to kick you out. Well, either you finally take your life into your own hands and stop sitting here instead of me. I really wanted to say, okay, Ashan, I will do as you want, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
So there was already such a big self there.
That would be unfair. That would just be unfair to my journey. Because I once again realized that the intention has to be yours. Not Ashan's, but yours. The ways to achieve it and the intention are the same, but the intention has to be yours. And so when I fully acknowledged my intention, when I accepted it, when I made sure that it was only mine and no one else's, I had already talked about this. Ashan and I had different intentions. Well, after that, we would just be getting in each other's way.
So what was your intention at that moment then?
I wanted to become a rishi. Rishi? Rishis are eternal. These are the beings that can observe the coming and going of the original.
And what did Ashan want?
And Ashan wanted to dive after him into that place where he was going, into the incomprehensible. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad. He wants to go there and I want to see it. Different points, but the system is absolutely identical. You can't get in there. Do you understand? To do that, you need to get in there.
Well, at the very least, yes. At the very least, learn these words, right? And then there's still 6 more years of work. Well, not 6. How long had you been practicing before that?
Well, in total, we've known each other for more than 10 years. Now, you, of course, even more so, because so much time has passed. Now it's probably 16.
But you make the decision to go and you stay.
Yes, I make the decision that, well, that's it. My journey as a student is over and my journey begins. Don't get me wrong about who at all.
But at that moment, you were still on good terms, right? I mean, it wasn't like you...
No, it's a bit different there. If you stop being a student, then everything closes off to you again.
Wait, how do the old students go about their practice?
And that's the next stage.
The path of victory and overcoming.
Do you really know exactly how many years have actually passed since that call was made? Quite a few, I suppose.
Wait, sorry. Did you know that by saying no and choosing your own path, you're closing the doors of the temple?
I had a feeling about that. I didn't know for sure, but I had a feeling about it.
And why is it connected to something? It's a kind of cruelty. Why? Because you have to be a master.
You have to be a master.
What doesn't make you a master? The opportunity to call your teacher, basically.
But you're already trained in everything. If you're calling him and asking a question, it means you don't know something. It means you've messed up somewhere.
Well, not a question, but just to come to some kind of group meditation. It's not that it's a question.
Wait a minute. It's not about that. I can call him now and come. I mean, I've already done that. I've already come to him. Ashan is there again. 100 years, 100 winters.
So it turns out you can't. Choosing your path, you go completely alone.
There are stages. At the moment when I decided to go my own way, instead of completely bending to the intention of the step, that's it. At that moment, everything closed off. Next, it's been about 7 years since I was moving forward on my own, without the opportunity to ask questions, only based on what I had been taught. Somewhere, something that I didn't finish, I finished. I missed something, I was pulling it out of myself. I had the whole range of tools that allowed me to shape myself as a master. But if I called Ashan every time, Ashan, give me a hint on this. Ashan, give me a hint. What kind of master would I have been? What could I do? It's just a principle of learning. And now, after 7 years, when I've calmed down and realized myself, everything has become good for me. Everything has become wonderful. I called and said, Ashan, everything is awesome with me. You're the best. And after that, he said, well, if you want, come over and we can practice.
And he picked up the phone at the moment I called.
Right away. He picked up the phone right away. This, well, you see, these are very difficult things to explain when you have no contact with a person for 7 years. And then you just take that old number that you still have there. Thanks to the fact that the programs in the cloud save these numbers, naturally you lost it during this time. How many phones have already changed? And you just press, tap that number, and he picks up the phone right away. And he calls you by your name, says, hi, and you tell him, dude, everything you showed me, I've put into practice. Without this, I can't imagine how one can develop high-quality mastery within themselves. If you're always hanging on him, how are you going to become independent? Well, how? If you run to him for help with any problem, yeah, he'll help you out. He'll fix that issue. Yeah, just the fact that you expressed that to him already does some kind of benevolent actions that you no longer need to do. I've shown all these processes. Look, here sits Ashan. Shows energy. You stumbled, tripped, and got tense. You've entered his field. You synchronized with him, relaxed, but you would have done that in his field. But if his field isn't there, how are you going to do that? Without him, if you're not trained, do not know how, do not want to, then you are not a master. That means you're some kind of floating, just a dreamer. And when you find yourself completely without support, it's just zero. That was the last conversation. A few days later, I wrote him a question. Out of habit, you know how it is, muscle memory, I asked him a question, and he immediately explained to me that no, it doesn't work that way anymore. And at that moment, I actually realized what had happened and that I was communicating. It's just me and the knowledge that, yeah, that's it. And for about 7 years, all of this has been growing within me on its own. I tried teaching, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, but it turned out to be successful. In the end, I returned from the temple. Oh, I was informed that I'm no longer a student. I'm no longer involved in all of this, and I was gradually building my life. Naturally, no one remembered me, no friends or acquaintances. I was completely immersed. So, I'm going in then. And I'm looking where are job postings placed these days? It used to be Headhunter. He's probably still working there, but there's nothing worthwhile anymore. And find a website called YouTube. Oh, wow, look what they've come up with. I'm registering on this website. An employer finds me. Right away, on the very same day, they invited me for an interview. I was the kind of person who... They looked at me and asked what I knew about electrical wires. I replied that yes. They said that I work with electricity, and there I needed to open up. That's it. A café restaurant. They were getting it ready for the opening. I had to do the wiring, turn off the light bulbs and the little lamps. Preparing for a beautiful space. At first, I was working with upholstery and wood. In Altai, I trained with wood, so much so that I could work with it even with my eyes closed. After there was a situation where I needed to install a panel, redo the panel, meaning there was a panel there. There was a sign hanging on the panel. The lamp and the wiring were connected, and this panel had to be stopped. I'm standing there, but I can't really picture it, and I say it's nonsense, I'm going to take it apart now. I'll put together some dumplings. There won't be any problems with electricity, of course. And they saw how I took it apart and put it back together. There were no issues at all. Everything was clear. You, come on, you'll be the main one for the electricity, not the main one, just responsible for it. So I was doing fine there. I was installing outlets in the wall, putting in switches for the light bulbs, but those were just additional tasks.
So my first job, I didn't want to settle as a master. I wanted to teach instead. Or I just wanted the first thing that you needed, some kind of resources, right? For some reason, it didn't go well. Something was also in plain sight. Conditional, historical.
I encountered something very interesting when people asked me, what do you teach? And I answered, well, practical energy. What else? What is this all about? Well, they're on the Xerox of Suriko energy. And this is like Reiki, but it's not really Reiki. I want to say, well, there, there's the chakra. Well, there. And this is Buddhism, Hinduism. It's not quite Hinduism or Buddhism. It's still Sri Vidya. I just couldn't explain to the person what I teach. They were like, come on, get out of here. It's unclear. You're something else. I struggled for a long time to formulate it in accessible words to show what I was learning myself. Sometimes I would sit there and think, this is an amazing thing, but then I couldn't figure out what to call it and no one could recognize it. It's not popular. It's not advertised because once again, it's closed. Traditions don't need outsiders. They keep this whole path to themselves. It's not advertised because once again, it's closed. Traditions don't need outsiders there. They've been there all along this path. It's been passed down from generation to generation and it's always been kept as a secret. And so how do I present this? How do I represent it? I tried. Yes, I said, let me show you. Let me teach you. I stuck. Here they are. Understanding. I even remember white clouds came. I say, guys, these are not on the air. I won't show you time. Just let me show people. They will feel it and we will call it something. They don't work like that. At first, we agreed on a little book, or if you wrote a book, what is this book about? What is it called? This whole tradition, back and forth, well, it's called Uma, but we don't know anything about it, and it's written somewhere, but it's not written anywhere. It's a completely closed secret. You're touching on the video. Still on the internet with Golkin. It's a bit of a jumble of information. That's what it is. Very much so. Not exactly. And when I faced this, I thought, all right, I won't come up with anything. I'll just earn money in a different way.
So you made the first attempt, basically.
I was doing it all the time. I was constantly striving to teach, but I understood perfectly well that it's done differently. It's not like, hey guys, I know something amazing here. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Yeah, no, get out of here.
You really managed to work a bit of magic, having all the skills of practical energy work.
My intention is freedom. What am I doing there? To give up freedom.
So why then is your intention, as you say, I want to build a house for practitioners? What would you call that? That's not an intention. What is it?
I wasn't planning to build any house for practitioners.
So now you're saying you have one.
Yes, right now I do.
So for example, if that's not an intention, then what is it? Is it some kind of desire or plans of yours?
That's not an intention. The intention that was there is still the same. It's freedom. It's just a way to achieve it. That's how I know how to achieve it. How I was trained to achieve it. That's how I move forward. That's how I act. My ashram built temples, homes for practice. I say temples so as not to confuse people. A home for practice. The space is specifically constructed, geometrically correct. And I will do the same. And obviously, no one is going to build these for free.
So how did teaching come about in the end?
This gift for Virgo, it was just a gift. Goddess, I have never given up on my intention. At first, I was installing sockets in the wall. Then I think it's wonderful, but I need to develop. I will be selling Tesla coils. I knew how to assemble Tesla coils. I have this skill. I started assembling Tesla coils and selling them on Avito. At one point, a guy came to me for a coil, as he said, and while we were talking about this and that, I was showing him how it works, how to press the buttons. He says to me, listen, I have a video on my phone. What can I say about it? And he turns on some device. I look at him and say, basically, I have a basic understanding of it, just because I see how it can work. He says, can you assemble something like that? I said, I have the weekend free. I said, well, 2 days this weekend, 2 days next weekend. Well, in about 2 weeks, I'll assemble it. He was like, well, let's do it. And I said, I'll buy it from you too. I said, how much? He says, for the same price as you. The coil is being assembled like that. When I asked how he was going to pick up the coil, he said, yeah, let's do it. I'll get the money now. How much, he says, for this? He'll pay that money and continues to assemble. So he didn't really need that coil at all. In the end, he's just assembling it. I said, since it's a coil, yeah, let it sit with you for now. It happens more and more often. In the end, they expressed it as fire. I don't want to take this money that isn't worth anything. No, they're all leaving. I'm starting to assemble this device with this video. I assembled it, turned it on, and it worked. I text him saying, well, take it. He comes over, looks at it, and says, look, here's another video. And I say, are you going to settle in? I say, well, a closed box and just a little thing that produces some electrical effects. I said, well, I kind of have an idea of how it might work. I say, well, I don't give any guarantees. He says, come on, I'll give you some money to buy the components. I'm like, what's happening? I said, well, let's do it. But he gives me the money, turns around and leaves. I'm online, I got in touch with this person and I said, listen, this is how it works. Well, damn, yeah, that's how it works. And now I've opened everything up for sure, exactly how it works. I assembled exactly the same box for him and even joked about it. I bought the exact same box and I put all the components together. I call him, I tell him it's ready. He comes over, checks it out to take it. After a while, he will change and the conversation, come over, let's sit down and chat. And we talked. He says, I need the device. This is a very serious device. Actually, and he says, well, can you take care of this? I'm like, well, I mean, the outlets and the walls. He asks, how much do you earn a month from those outlets? I say that amount. He says, I'll pay you the same amount. You'll be working on this device. I said, well, let's do it. And for a while, I was working on this device at home, and he was again looking at me. Then I took a break. It wasn't working. It just wasn't happening. He took a pause, and I was like, so what am I supposed to do now? About a week or a week and a half went by, and he writes to me again saying, there's a lab, all the equipment is already set up. Just come in. The salary will be significantly higher than it was before. And after that, I started focusing not on assembling devices, but on research. I had a task, I was solving it, looking for ways to control electricity to create certain effects. And we studied those effects. In general, we were making these devices. The lab changed over time. As a result, a study was conducted. Patent. As for the future of it, I don't really know much about this person, who they are. They didn't really share much about themselves, just that there's some wealthy patron, a researcher.
At least the device, what it was for, what it was aimed at. Can this be explained, or is it very low there? We won't understand anymore.
I can tell you this, the processes we were looking for in metals are quantum processes. They haven't been studied much yet. And there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And these quantum processes, and these aren't just empty words, we have everything there now. There's quantum psychology. No, these are real quantum physical processes in the electron gas that moves through the metal. And under certain conditions with specific influences from fields, this movement of the gas causes energy emissions. And this needed to be studied. It needed to be brought under control. So we took it under control and studied it. In the end, the patent was written. The work was finished. Well, by that time, I had fully developed my YouTube channel, where I showcased some of my projects and little devices.
Oh, I see. The channel was also dedicated to electronics?
Yes, I had my own channel, which is still somewhere out there on the internet, dedicated to electronics. My channel, where I obviously didn't show any lab work, but I showcased some gadgets where I used these principles without explicitly stating them out loud. And it turns out that the device seems to be understandable, but how it works is unclear. And that was pretty cool. So I felt this kind of inner satisfaction, you know, that I'm showing some things and people are sitting there guessing. There you go. And naturally, I attracted a lot of attention. Not the kind of attention that modern YouTube channels get, but the attention of a certain number of people who were interested in the devices. And people started saying, hey, can you build a device? So with this effect and that effect, I said, yeah, I can do that. Or maybe repeat it there, for example. The device, Folokovsky. Yeah, the last name is strange, but he's a real person. And he actually made devices for healing from cancer, training on cows, I was just asked, not in the sense of healing from cancer, but more like, build the device and we'll figure it out ourselves.
We'll heal ourselves.
Well, something like that, yeah. We believe in Lukovsky, but we can't build the device. I don't believe in Lukovsky, but I can build the device. So we teamed up and I gradually started getting into self-sufficiency with this business probably. And when the laboratories closed down, when my services were no longer needed, I felt completely at ease and very good about myself, just selling various devices to meet different requests. I was doing. Everything was going well for me. Everything was great. I continued teaching. Zadkshen, I kept teaching just to friends and acquaintances, which have already been tried. This is it. Practical energy work. So it wasn't a source of income. It was more of a hobby, and that hobby turned into a source of income.
But nevertheless, you were gradually showing up in this.
Of course. I hardly ever stopped teaching, but it was such a casual attitude towards all of it. From the outside, yeah, from any side. So there, until we meet again, there was no system. There wasn't any to be continued. There were no clear initiations. How to say the accompaniment of a person, that is, but he remembered me there, came, forgot. I didn't forget. That's it. And it wasn't a source of income. Yeah, someone was giving a little bit here and there, just a few coins, well, when it was tight. And those were just pennies, and even for something. And then an event happens, another war starts. I'm losing the ability to purchase electronic components. There are no such components in Russia, and it will be a while before those components are available. And here I find myself in a situation where I can't access these warehouses, and here I only have AliExpress left, where it's just counterfeit after counterfeit, one fake after another, where there are no truly high-quality transistors, and then bam. But how am I supposed to put all this together without them? And people got tense, and those kinds of things like, oh, put this together for me, the magical one, put this together for me. So people got a bit scared and panicked, and the orders disappeared. And I was like, oops. So do I have to screw the outlets into the wall again? And I just turned to the Virgin. So as you say, why didn't you use your skills? I used my skills and turned to the Virgin. I said to the Virgin, it's a situation. It's a situation. I need money. I want to keep practicing. I don't know how to piece this together, I say. Well, no, I don't have an understanding of how to piece this together. I said, well, this needs to be done urgently right now. And that's it. And I relaxed, let go of the whole situation, and that's it. I completed the practice. And then I stand with my arms wide open and my eyes wide open, wondering where this will manifest now, just hoping not to miss it, just hoping not to miss the opportunity. I mean, the feedback from reality. So the path, and a person arrives who placed an order through someone. He arrives in Moscow and texts me at night asking how things are going. With this service, listen, I made a prototype, but it needs to be tested there. We're not going in that direction. And I just say, somehow I refined it, but this isn't the final version. I just need to hear from you whether it's this or not. I go to him, we start interacting, I show him the device, he takes it for himself and starts testing it on himself. And at the same time, we're chatting about this and that. And of course, the conversation turns to that part of my life that was dedicated to practice. And this person tells me, listen, we need to record an interview with you. I'm like, about what? He says, well, you're going to tell me about it now. It sounds cool, interesting. Actually, maybe this will interest people. I say, well, let's record the interview. I need a report. Well, I'm immediately calculating the money in my head, like how much does the operator cost? How much does the editor cost? The equipment? How is all this going to be done? He says, just come, I'll take care of everything. I say, and who are you? Where? What? He says, well, I have a channel on YouTube. We'll post it there.
What was the person's name?
His name was Ilya Radzevich. And in the end, we agree. He says, well, just call this guy. He'll organize everything. I make the call. I answer questions, organizational moments. In the end, we record this interview. No, not that, this one. And he tells me the main thing is this. Well, some kind of practice. We don't know yet how the audience will accept you. So let's start with some simple practice. Give me something to offer people. And I say, I gave not just something simple, not simple at all, but for some reason I really wanted to give this particular practice. I think if give something good. Yes, maybe it's not the simplest, but it's awesome. And the people who get access to it, they definitely won't find it on the internet. Well, 100%. And this basic stuff about opening chakras, the channels, plus or minus, that's already well known. And I chose exactly that. A topic that became just one small part of a huge course. And I wanted to show that if something is needed, let it be this. And people really felt it. I seriously underestimated the audience. I thought they probably wouldn't be able to handle it. After all, this is far from the beginner stage. These were 5 divine qualities, but not in the sense that I was just sitting and philosophizing. I was demonstrating it on an energetic level. These 5 tattvas, these are the energies, the vibrations that govern the self-reality from which self-reality is woven. It's a very deep, serious process, and it manifests in the field structures around the body. It's called the 5 divine qualities. The interview went by, and I kind of let that topic go, started looking for ways to find those transistors after all. And a person writes to me, Ilya says, listen, your course has broken the sales record. I say, and he says, so let's go. Write down everything you know. I say, yes. I know so much, we have to start somewhere. I say, start from the beginning. How did you learn? Let's get started.
So you actually got an offer to record a course, not an interview, but no, just write the course right away.
Here's the operator, here you go. The budget for everything. I didn't invest a single penny into this, just a zero. So people have trusted so much to what I showed. So what we simply do.
So did you also trust your country, the people, the team?
I had no options but to trust, because I knew I had made that request. I sent that request, and here's the response. So how could I not trust it? Of course, I said, take it all with hands and feet. Do it however you think is necessary. So I didn't even try to interfere in those processes. I just did what I know how to do. Yes, regarding the device, everything immediately sank. That is, I had to finish this device, but I still haven't done it. Until we meet again. But it seems like they aren't making any claims against me. So for now, you know, in the cold.
I just don't pick up the phone. And I get a call from an Italian, well...
It's the same person. Well, okay, it seems like they aren't coming after me and I seem to be fine. So we're starting to record all of this. And we're writing this course for several weeks. We wrote it. What I'm saying is, listen, well, where should I stop? He says, don't stop anywhere. Just write down everything you know. I'm explaining that it won't work like that. We'll probably be writing for a year then. He says, okay, then we need a foundation. We created this foundation that anyone can start with.
Well, yeah, because we have some kind of methodology and you're developing it yourself.
No, that's how I'm learning.
I just pulled this from my memory. Wait, there was a year of discipline. I listed them. They were a bit different, not just one. And the same thing in that first course, which I think is called Practical Energy.
Yeah, well, for a year you train this. Just look, when I was learning this, they showed us these practices step by step over the course of a year. But since I have already learned this, then when the camera is on, I can show these stages. I don't need this code right away. That is, we had our task exercises and description of this exercises, description of the exercise. That is very tough, very specifically. There's no philosophy, none of those musings, no religion, just clear. So you do this. For that, you do that. For this, and that's it. We get into the practice. I give these settings, you give the state, and it all gets transmitted through space. Pashan demonstrated this during a Skype call. It appeared cool. And that's it, I'm starting to do this. We recorded this course, we recorded this year-long material, which was gradually given out over the year, and we put it all together into one cohesive whole. A course called Practical Energy. That's it, they took it. And I can even tell you more, I don't have the right to document this. So they said, here are our rules. I said, okay, you have those rules? And I wasn't afraid, I didn't fear. Because once again, I'm telling you, it's not about trusting a person, it's about trusting your path. It's about trusting the spirit. They tell me, here's the contract, and I say, no problem, I'll sign it. Well, I read it, of course, yeah, it's like, okay. They ask, how much are we going to sell it for? I say, I don't know.
I've spent my whole life in the temple, and I'm like, what are you asking me? I know how much a transistor costs, yeah, because I buy it, but I don't know how much knowledge costs. I say, you should do this professionally. I say, do it as you see fit. I don't even want to, so I'm not going to interfere with you in this matter. And we agreed that they do what they know how to do, and I do what I know how to do, and we try not to interfere with each other. Of course, there are some minor disagreements, some everyday conflicts, but it's also trivial. It's purely part of the work processes, that's all. So they say, well, it needs to be done this way, but it won't work like that because it needs to be shown differently. It needs to be expressed differently. Well, let's express it differently, but then it should be like this and that. Well, that's fine. That's still manageable. So just some aspects like that, and that's it. And we collaborate wonderfully. To this day, they help me do what I can't do, and I don't need to go and learn. Right now, a bunch of cameras are looking at us. Give me this camera, but can I just turn the button on and off on the needle? I don't know how to work, but they do, and I don't need to waste my time. You don't need to waste your energy on learning all of this. So I was spending my energy on demonstrating that I already have polished and refined. I'm rearranging my room, moving the furniture, clearing out all the equipment, and I'm starting to fully immerse myself in teaching. Naturally, this brings in income, and that income is set aside for building the temple. So everything is good again, everything is wonderful again. A home for practices. So
And when do you roughly plan to start the construction? So this is a project as far as
Davi shows, having gone through my journey when I know better than anyone else, I've come to a clear conclusion. I don't know better than everyone else. I can only aim for my goal. I am focused on the goal of freedom. I was trained step by step. The achievement of this freedom, I'm not arguing, yes, maybe there's some other way, but I'm trained in my own path. And according to this, I move along my path. And you can't imagine how deeply I trust these global currents right now. So I don't have to think about when this will happen, or when I'll earn that money, or how much more I have to do. I'm not even focused on that at all. I just do what I know how to do. And at that moment, when the puzzle comes together again, when all the possibilities and probabilities align, and Devi opens another door for me, I will step through it completely calmly, and I will have that place where I can practice on a completely different level. At a completely different level.
And how will this level be different? Because it will be very well architecturally constructed. Yes.
Geometry, choosing a location, the processes the energies that are moving there. Well, look, when we rent the same studio, no one pays attention to how the energy moves here. We came, filmed, and left. But if we're building a specific house for practices, everything is taken into account there. This will be a place where you arrive and you just get swept away, simply because you stepped onto the territory, to the energy world.
Where did you get this knowledge? Is this from Ashan too?
Of course, yes.
From Ashan?
Of course, of course. These are all traditional teachings. He was building his house for practices right in front of my eyes. He told us the nuances, the specifics of all this, how everything is done correctly, what to pay attention to, how it's all positioned, what geometry should be, where the hidden sacred structures are, and where they can be openly shown. The sacred structures.
So in general, humanity knows and has this knowledge, but globally, there isn't such architecture. Why? Because it's not needed.
It exists, this architecture.
I mean, none of us actually build houses or studios according to that. No, we don't build them, of course. But why? I mean, if there's a place where you can be instantly filled up, it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Well, listen, let's be honest. Not everyone wants to see absolutely clearly that everything we are in is an illusion. Yeah, this is bulking. There are people who say, don't try to convince me. I'm enjoying it this way. I want to play. I want to have fun. Let him live in his rectangular box and play as much as he wants. But there are people who say, we're tired of playing. We want to take a look. Behind the projector, we want to look behind this film to see what, where, and in what we are. For such people, a properly configured space is necessary. Yes, you can do it sitting in a chair, but it takes a long time compared to the goal we've set for ourselves. So it should be specially formed. I say it again, that's how I've been trained. Maybe there's another approach, but I'm moving the way I know how. And so, in the way I know how, you build your own space, using your own knowledge to create it. And in that space, the comfort for practice increases many times over.
And because everything there is set up to free you from here, the processes are much more efficient. It's significantly more effective.
Are you planning to transition to that place?
To realize the body of light.
Yes, to transition to the body of light. And how will it look to an observer from the outside?
You know, Ashram talked about how he saw it, that this also happened in the temple. This was demonstrated by a teacher of some sort. The fact that this is a parampara means it's a transmission from generation to generation. And he told me that it became brighter. Meaning a real light came from the person, as if he became a light bulb. Well, not a strong one, more like a dim light bulb. And after that, he simply dissolved into the space. That's it. He could no longer be perceived.
His clothes remained, well, I mean, he wasn't sitting there naked physically.
The clothes remained, nothing happened to them. Wow. So it didn't burn there, it didn't burst into flames, it just was, and that's it. And there was no fire, no flames there, there was light. Not very bright, because these are mostly dark spaces like temples. And then he just dissolved, just like that. How did this happen according to your words? I didn't see it myself, but I hope that I can demonstrate this myself. Simply to demonstrate.
And now you no longer have that burning fire and insatiable thirst for knowledge. Can you really say that you've come to understand the world, the universe, its structure?
You know, I'm ready to agree that there's a lot I don't know. I really don't know. It's the same as handling a camera, which you won't be able to, yes, I can figure it out.
But that doesn't interest you. You're not eager to find it out.
I don't need to know that, yes, you're right. So there is a goal, and so to achieve the goal, I know everything. Everything I need to do. There are many aspects in this reality that are curious. Some are not, some are cool, and some are uninteresting. And one way or another, I interact with it. At least with what I still somewhat like. But I can't say that I'm seeking knowledge, that's it. I'm not looking for them anymore. Everything I need, I already have. Now it's all about putting it into action.
And in this, you trust the higher order? Well, it's about the journey, the implementation. It turns out, when Devi, you say how Devi will decide.
Yes, I trust, Devi, but it's not blind trust.
Well, obviously, of course, it's not like you're just sitting there.
I act in the manner that reality clearly suggests to me, but it's suggested based on what I've ordered for myself. That's the kind of trust.
The main question still remains with us. What happened at home in Altai?
No idea.
I just remembered that we were talking about the fate of the house.
Listen, you know, I just found out that apparently I heard that my ex-girlfriend recently sold it to someone, to another person. I just heard, most likely that's true. Well, not directly from her, just I flew to her. Well, I don't care.
So you moved some people in there and that's it? You went to Ashram?
Oh, listen, no. I moved people in there. I went to Ashram and studied with Ashram. Then I had to come back because those guys were moving out. We later became friends with them. There were a lot of interesting things too. There was a situation, and in the end, one of them even ended up in Ashram's temple. So he was so filled with my stories about it that he wanted to experience it himself.
It's practically impossible to get in together.
Yeah, but I was like his thread. So Ashram said, "Who is that?" I said, "This is the person who..."
I was keeping an eye on the house.
Yeah. Well, let's say he didn't decide to stay there. He's also a person who goes with his own flow. I don't even know where he is right now. We haven't chatted in a long time. But I came back, and for about a year, I was finishing everything up there. So I didn't abandon that house. I left a person who, well, I left at that moment. She came to me herself. After the Ashram ritual. Then I came back. I wasn't whining anymore. I wasn't asking for anything. I started looking for ways to wrap everything up myself. In the end, I did everything I could. I found a caretaker, started paying him some amount, and made an agreement with him. There were already other people who settled nearby, bought land, and started building too. There was some activity happening there. And then I called my friend. Well, at that point, we were no longer together. I said, "Listen, well," I also went, "All right, here are the caretaker's contacts, here are the neighbor's contacts, and here are some other contacts too, yeah, but I won't be here anymore, so let's get you involved as well." Before that, she was busy with her own stuff. She actually moved to Europe and settled there, not even to Russia. She stayed in Altai for a year and a half, not even in Russia.
A person has become so attached to a big life in the cold. We ended up having such an interesting retrospective, just like an engaging series, because you really have so many, well, I wouldn't say just ups and downs, although I guess there have been some challenges and overcoming. It was really interesting to listen to all of this. You just walked through all your years with me.
I remembered so much more while I was telling you.
Well, I guess this is definitely not the format, even though we're writing for over 4 hours, but still, you had such a life, that we might really have to shoot a second episode, a third episode, and so on, if the viewers are interested.
We should definitely film another course. It's time.
Is there anything that you look back on now and wish you could change?
Absolutely not.
How would you have acted differently, or would you have made decisions faster? You don't feel, I wouldn't call it regret, but there's just that moment.
No, not even the slightest doubt. Everything I did was what allowed me to be free. You see, when you push through your own limits, even if you do something foolish, once you've done that foolish thing, you never go back to it. But even after pushing through and pushing that foolishness away, it will still gnaw at you somewhere inside. You will have it anyway. Maybe I did the right thing. Maybe I did the wrong thing. Well, I agreed. That's good. So here I took action, realized that what I did was terrible, took responsibility for it, became more aware, more ruthless, more flawless, and moved forward in that state. I saw people in the tradition who were deeply committed to their beliefs and values, who decided not to manifest at all, and who chose a path of reflection, introspection, and contemplation to simply follow the tradition, embracing a life of quietude and devotion. Every time this topic came up, I could see how much Ashan disapproved of that choice. He was really showing with all his vibrations that this is not what gives freedom. It's not about crawling before him and complete submission. That's not what gives freedom. It gives you freedom when you finally break free and say, this is where I want to go, and thank you for that. So I don't regret anything at all. Even somewhere I could have done something faster, slower, it doesn't matter at all. It's important to realize the intention, and the more intricate it was, the more you enjoy and savor it when you look back on it. Can you imagine if everything were perfect and flawless for me? What would I be remembering right now? I'd just be sitting there, yeah, everything would be fine for me. So why are you still sitting in that chair then?
It's not perfect and flawless. It's just a question of, sometimes it happens that you should have gone, or on the contrary, you shouldn't have done it.
All the wood I chopped, it was a blast. Yeah, maybe in the moment I was pulling my hair out, wondering what I was doing. But then when I overcame it all, when I climbed out of it, spread my wings, again, straightened my back, I was like, man, I really did a great job pushing through that. Well, there's definitely something to remember, something to feel nostalgic about. There is something like this, that when you once again find yourself in a difficult situation, you are like, wait a minute, there have been so many of these situations before. Now I'll gather myself and push through. And you gather yourself and push through. This is an experience and mastery that you can't regret. How can you regret something that made you incredibly strong and effective? Well, how can you regret that? Yeah, it was tough in the moment, but when you go to the gym and pick up a barbell, it's hard, but you don't really stress about it too much. So no, my entire life journey, all my choices, all my decisions, each and every one of them, this is my mastery as of today. And that's what absolutely allows me to move forward confidently, with great joy, and with love in my heart and soul towards my intention. So indeed, everything is incredibly great and undoubtedly wonderful.
Everything is great. What would you say is your main, perhaps, life philosophy based on the experience shaped by one particular rule? One rule? It sounds like, being true to your intention.
Yes, under no circumstances should you betray your goal. You can modify it, transform it somehow. Because the words I initially used were, I want to understand how the world works. And that drove me. Then, when the puzzle of the universe started to come together, I was like, oh, I want to get out of this. So that's it, I realized, but I want to get out. So it was again somewhere beyond the horizon. At first, initially, I was unable to comprehend exactly what the word should be. Unlimited freedom, omnipotence, when you can do anything, independence. And the strength, something that will finally allow me to listen to everything that limits me. what do you call it? And then I overheard the word freedom, and that was it. And yes, it can be called that word. One way or another, the desire for this freedom has been present from the very beginning. It was just called different things. And I have never betrayed that in my life. I could even doubt Ashan's words at some point. There was such foolishness. But I never doubted where I was heading. And it was precisely this goal, this direction I was moving towards, that allowed me to get through all those situations that, without this goal, would have completely extinguished me. I would say no, I guess I'm just like everyone else. Well, at least everything is clear. So out of all the beautiful words, all the words about love, about the Creator, about harmony, out of all of them, I can say that the goal, the intention, and not the slightest chance to betray it. For myself, and just not leave that opportunity. No compromises.
Well, in any case, your path, that's what I'm showing you.
This is my life. My path is my life. And there are no double or triple meanings here. I am who I am, and I have nothing to hide from myself, Vasily.
Anton, I thank you for being who you are. So wonderful. He came to us today, he was with us. We spent a long time writing together, a lot of material. I'm sure this will be an exciting and interesting journey for our viewers. Friends, we are saying goodbye. See you again on the channels of the Secret Society.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.